the macro effects. And I mean, in terms of the macro effects, you start to question what this is going to mean for the sort of two-pronged economic approach that China has. On the one hand, supporting growth, on the other, deleveraging. Is that going to change at all? I mean, I guess the question you've got to ask yourself is, if there is a big shock to China's economy, and, you know, you've got some people like UBS predicting sub 4% growth for the first quarter in China, is it going to be a sharp but short shock? And if that's the case and there's a V-shaped recovery, should you really be taking risk off the table? And if it is worse than that, then aren't central banks going to be the backstop, and therefore should you be adding risk? I'm not trying to sound like a big bull, but I'm just trying to read the resilience that we've been seeing in the markets at the moment.
It's a very hard one to call on. One, of course, it's the knock-on effects that are so huge, not just in the region, but also, of course, the German economy, the one in Europe most tied, of course, to China. A lot of scratching of heads, I imagine, going on there to think about how this is all going to impact.
Yeah. Let's not forget, though, that there's a lot of other things going on in the market, not least the particular resilience we've been seeing in tech stocks, and Tesla and the rise in that share price actually pushing the Nasdaq to a record, but not only that, impacting the Chinex in China because a lot of suppliers to Tesla in that benchmark. So that actually has recouped all of its post-Lunar New Year losses. The MSCI Asia Pacific Index was heading for its first back-to-back gains since the concerns around the coronavirus. At one point, we saw the gains fading just a little bit. We are up 0.6% on Asia's equity benchmark now. 2 days of gains. As I said, the Nasdaq in the US hit a record yesterday. In Europe, let's take a look how we're doing 3 minutes into the equity market open here. So the Stock 600 is lower by 0.2%. So in line pretty much with what futures were indicating, snapping 2 days of gains. In terms of industry group distribution, telecoms and construction outperforming to the upside, along with real estate and tech. So you've got a mix of tech and some defensive sectors there in the green. On the downside, oil and gas and personal and household goods underperforming. On regional equity benchmarks, you're seeing some red on the screen. FTSE 100, CAC 40 and DAX all lower by at least 0.3%. Same for the FTSE MIB. The IBEX trades flat. In terms of US futures, so it looks like we could fade some of those gains we saw yesterday. The S&P 500 jumped biggest gains since August. Nasdaq futures, S&P futures and Dow futures all down about 0.2%. So there's a little bit of a divergence between Asia, Europe and the US, but you could argue that Asia really is playing catch up to what happened in the US yesterday. In the bond market, concerns seem to be reflected here. The 10-year Treasury yield down 2 basis points on a 158 handle. Citigroup is starting to pull back from being bullish on treasuries, but Bank of America saying we could get to a 125 handle on the 10-year yield in the first half of the year. So some diverging views out there on 10-year treasuries, although Citigroup's call is a little bit more short-term. The 10-year bund yield down a basis point, -41. 10-year gilt yield down almost 2 basis points. The Aussie was showing some resilience on comments from Governor Lowe, but it's pretty flat right now. The yen is actually bid, so some somewhat mixed pictures. Not really, actually. The yen is bid along with
1.3% there towards the bottom of the Stock's Industrial Goods and Services Index. So yeah, the quarterly profit missed estimates as its automotive, machine building and energy businesses declined. And so it's also going to be interesting to see how the impact on the virus in China will play out on demand for the company. And also at the AGM later today, there's going to be a focus on the company's contract to supply equipment to an Australian coal mine, which has come under pressure from environmental activists. So a lot to kind of digest there.
And BNP Paribas, now they were a real boost and a real outlier in terms of European banks. FICC particularly strong.
Yeah, so it seems to be a good set of results, but the shares are slightly flat today. So the company said that, I mean, on the negative side, it slightly cut some of its profitability targets, and this comes from the sort of impact of falling rates that banks are grappling with. But, you know, revenue from fixed income securities trading jumped nearly 63%, so it seems to be a sort of positive positive result overall.
And finally, Imperial Brands. Now, there's been a change at the top, as we know. The new CEO, he's got quite a something to face, which not least a forecast for profit growth that doesn't really fit.
Yeah, so today the cigarette maker has abandoned its forecast for profit growth this year. If we have a look at the shares, are down 4.7%. They're at the bottom of the FTSE 100. So this is really due to weak demand for vaping products. Imperial Brands said that it's writing down the value of its flavored vaping product inventory due to a ban in the US. So, something to keep an eye on for the AGM later today as well.
All right, Kit, thanks very much. Kit Rees there, live in our London studio.
Let's get back to our top story then, Roger, and the death toll from China's coronavirus is nearing 500. The number of cases now almost 25,000, with health officials confirming multiple cases of infections from Japan to Singapore. With more on the latest, Bloomberg's Selena Wang reports from Beijing.
The outbreak has also spread across countries with multiple more cases of infections from Japan to Singapore. The World Health Organization, however, has said the coronavirus has not shown much mutation yet or caused a pandemic, while the bulk of the cases still remain in China's Hubei province. The U.S. is readying for a possible pandemic with 11 diagnosed cases so far and plans to 1,000 Americans evacuated from China's Hubei province. Other countries, including the UK and France, are also pulling some of their citizens out of China. In Beijing, I'm Selena Wang, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And corporates are starting to flag the impact of the virus outbreak. Nike says it's closed about half of its company-owned stores in China as a result. That story from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Nike says it expects that to have, quote, a material impact on its operations in the country. It says the stores that remain open are operating at reduced hours as retail traffic has dropped as a result of the outbreak. Nike is the first big consumer company to cite material impact from the virus on its business in China, while Starbucks has closed half its stores, about 2,000 in total, and Apple has said it will have an impact on its supply chain. Most major corporations have said it's too soon to assess the financial effect from the rapidly spreading epidemic. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Speaking of Apple, its main production partner has cut its 2020 revenue growth outlook after assessing the potential impact of the coronavirus outbreak. Honhai, which makes the vast majority of the world's iPhones from the central Chinese city of Zhengzhou, is now projecting a sales increase of 1% to 3% this year.
Disney also mentioned the virus impact on its earnings call. The CFO said the company expects the Shanghai park closure alone to crimp profits in the current quarter by $135 million, assuming it's shuttered for 2 months.
Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia's push for oil production cuts has run into more resistance from Russia. The kingdom wants curbs of at least 500,000 barrels a day to prop up oil prices, but Russia has continued to push back. Moscow's budget is more resilient to lower prices. The discussions come as the coronavirus is continuing to hit oil demand in China, but oil has been climbing today from a one-year low.
Now let's go back to BNP Paribas, which of course you mentioned in stocks to watch. The French lender is keeping pace with its Wall Street rivals. That's as it posts a near 63% jump in fixed income trading revenue. FICC revenue jumped to nearly 820 million euros in the first 3 months of the year. The result places BNP ahead of European rivals Deutsche Bank and UBS. We spoke to the CFO, Lars Machenil, this morning.
The bank has the capital to basically serve the clients, and it has that intimacy to really serve the excellence with customers. And so what we basically see is that we capture market share on all of those domains. Take, for example, credit, we do it. Take rates, we do it. Also on Forex. On Forex, there was a bit of a rebound because last year wasn't that weaker, but still, on all three, the bank is doing very well because the bank is well positioned to do it on capital and on systems.
That was BNP CFO Lars Machenil.
Siemens is raising its stake in wind turbine maker Siemens Gamesa, buying Iberdrola's holding for 1.1 billion euros. That's as it prepares to overhaul its energy business. Its holding in Gamesa will be folded into the power and gas unit that's slated for a spin-off later this year. And it had earnings this morning as well, Siemens. It posted quarterly profit that missed estimates, the company warning that a market slump isn't going to get any better. It was hurt by a steep decline in the automotive, machine building and energy businesses. services.
Now for the latest in global news, Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans joins us. Nan, you've got the latest from Capitol Hill.
Roger, there's been a lot going on in the US, but let's start where Donald Trump struck a triumphant tone in his State of the Union address. The president says he is building the world's most prosperous and inclusive society. He's staking his bid for re-election squarely on the strength of the US economy.
America's fortunes are on the rise, and America's future is blazing bright. The years of economic decay are over.
It was a deeply partisan affair. The president turned his back on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi as she offered to shake his hand. Trump delivered his State of the Union address on the eve of his likely acquittal in the Senate's impeachment trial. Meanwhile, Democratic presidential hopeful Pete Buttigieg has come out marginally ahead in partial results from the troubled Iowa caucus. Bernie Sanders was a close second. Now back to one of our top stories. As more cases of the coronavirus are reported outside of China, 10 people on a cruise ship moored near the Japanese port of Yokohama have tested positive for the disease and been taken to hospital. Bloomberg's Isabel Reynolds reports.
A total of 273 people will be tested aboard the vessel. Those who've not been infected will be required to stay on the ship for up to 14 days to avoid any spread of the infection, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said. Checks on the Diamond Princess began after a Hong Kong man who'd been a passenger on the ship tested positive for the virus. In Tokyo, Isabel Reynolds, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And emergency services in Australia are switching their focus from fires to flooding. Some areas are forecast to have their heaviest rainfall in years in the coming week, with 62 wildfires still burning in New South Wales and large parts of the country suffering from drought. Rain should bring some welcome relief and extinguish most of the fires on the eastern seaboard in coming weeks. Parts of Queensland are already flooded, and Sydney should have its wettest week since at least last March. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, we'll talk about coronavirus as the death toll is nearing 500 and new cases are being confirmed across the rest of Asia. Markets resume a risk-off tone with European stocks and US futures lower. The 10-year Treasury yield down almost 2 basis points after jumping 7 basis points yesterday. 158 handle. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Something remarkable happens when just the right elements come together. Ideas with technology, data with inspiration, investors with solutions. This is what Invesco does every day, because they believe the possibilities of life and investing are greater when we come together. Invesco. Let's invest in greater possibilities together. To learn more, visit Invesco.com/together. Invesco Distributors Incorporated.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesmaned the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Riggs.
Now, the coronavirus prompting investors to shake up their strategies, at least in the short term. Erin Gibbs is president and CIO of Gibbs Wealth Management. She joins us from New York. Aaron, I just wonder, China markets had a good day yesterday, U.S. equity markets seemingly today pretty positive, rebounding. What will it take to get a pullback on these very resilient equity markets?
So I think we're just going to see a lot of volatility where we see these down days and up days. And I think that today what we saw in the Asian markets is largely just sort of more of a shorter term bounce after we saw such a disastrous day the day before with all that sort of pent up negative selling action coming off the holiday. So I think we're probably going to continue to see more of these down days, particularly in emerging market and Asian markets, and then more of a mix in the U.S. market. So right now, U.S. equities are really priced for perfection. We're looking at 19 times forward earnings. These are levels that we haven't seen in 18 years. We're talking, the 2002 boom. And so it really won't take much for us to have those nasty down days that we've been seeing over the past week. And then hopefully, eventually, a good rebound as we still have solid economic footing.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now, European equities are in the red, with US futures also pointing lower following yesterday's rally. The Asian risk-on mood in equities abating a bit now. The Stock 600 currently flat. The FTSE and the CAC 40 both down 0.3%, similarly so for the DAX in Frankfurt. In stocks, BNP Paribas moving slightly lower, and Paris currently down 0.7%, despite recording a 63% jump in FIC trading in the fourth quarter. Meanwhile, Smurfit Kappa gaining almost 5% here in London after full-year profits met estimates. In bond markets, we're seeing the 10-year Treasury yield down more than 2 basis points to 1.58%. If we take a look at 10-year bund yields, down a basis point at negative 41. 10-year gilt yields also down a basis point, currently at 56 basis points. I'm also keeping a close eye on Aussie yields, which jumped 10 basis points earlier, back above 1% after RBA Governor Philip Lowe signalled policymakers may refrain from further interest rates cut. That also saw the Aussie dollar erasing earlier losses. But the offshore yuan, meanwhile, weaker again today, back above that 7 per dollar level. The yen, meanwhile, gaining up 0.2% at 109.4 against the greenback. The Bloomberg dollar spot index is unchanged. Sterling turning slightly higher now, but still at that 130 level, while the euro is holding at 110. Finally, oil is near a year one low after Russia rebuffed Saudi Arabia's call for a production cut. The JMMC still meeting today, but WTI not seeing much of a reprieve, currently up just 0.4% at $49 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Dan Garrins with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. The European Union is rejecting President Trump's proposal for securing peace in the Middle East. The EU is also expressing concern about Israel's plans to annex more Palestinian land. The bloc says it remains committed to a two-state solution. Trump's plan was welcomed by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but the Palestinian president dismissed it as, quote, nonsense. A South African court has ordered the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma after he failed to show up for his corruption trial. Zuma is facing 16 charges, including allegedly taking bribes from arms dealers during his 9-year rule. He denies any wrongdoing. Zuma's attorney says his health problems prevented him from attending that trial. And it's claimed 1 in 14 people no longer carry a wallet, and 20% of those who use one don't actually keep cash in it. The UK-wide survey was carried out by PayPal. The rise in contactless cards and mobile payment apps means many of us are less reliant on cash. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. I actually lost my card the other day, and I had to go into branch and get cash out 3 times and only live on cash. And I loved it. It makes you spend less.
But you know what? I lose so many cards a year because I'm not very good with bank cards, but I've put them all on my mobile phone and my life has been revolutionised.
This is where Mary needs to go.
No, I like spending hard cash. It helps you control your money better.
Oh,
old.
Makes a hole in your pocket there.
Well, every time you pay with it on your mobile phone, they tell you how much you've spent, so it keeps a list for you.
Okay.
Some just don't want to know that.
Okay, Leanne Gerrans, thank you so much with the world news. Let's get back to our top story. And the death toll of the coronavirus is nearing 500, with more than 24,300 confirmed cases as the outbreak continues to spread. At the same time, an increasing number of companies have halted production in China as a result of virus fears. Nike, Disney and Ford have all taken this step. And in Europe, Carlsberg told Bloomberg yesterday that it would have to close some breweries in the country. From more, let's go live to Hong Kong, where Bloomberg's Richard Salamat is standing by. Richard, great to have you with us. What's the take on how this is going to impact China's economy right now? Is the feeling that it's going to be a sharp but short shock?
Yeah, this is just the thing, isn't it? I mean, this was a Lunar New Year. You have a situation similar to that at Christmas where people buy one-off gifts. Now, not buying those doesn't come back till next year. So some of it, unlike SARS in 2003, is unlikely to be actually recouped further down the line. And as a result, we've got various banks out there. We had last week, I think it was Nomura, which said that they saw even 2 percentage points being actually shaved off economic growth in the first quarter. Then we have Goldman Sachs, UBS, and Macquarie, all of them are weighing in as well, and cutting their calculations as well for not just the first quarter but for the full year. People are expecting material shocks here, really, and even Barclays saying we could have 2.2 percentage points off first quarter growth, a downgrade coming through from what they had before, because they did say at that stage that it would be transitory. So people are revising the usage of that particular word, and I suppose we can talk a little bit more about what the impact is on the retail side of things, because let's face it, the central bank, the PBOC, has been out there. It's been undertaking reverse repurchases. Yesterday was $57 billion, and that's the biggest that we've had in just over a year. But does that address what's happening on the streets? Because that perhaps addresses market stability and perhaps shows to people that they will do whatever it takes, perhaps to shore up these equity markets and bond markets as well. But what about the Hon Hai, for one thing? It's Apple's main production partner, cut its 2020 revenue growth outlook. We've got at the moment also Walt Disney alluded to that. They say that if the park in Shanghai that they have is closed for the 2 months that some are assuming it will be, it could crimp profits by about $135 million. Here in Hong Kong, Disneyland is closed as well, and that could actually have a cost of something like $40 million too in the first quarter. We've also got Nike, of course. They're saying the coronavirus will materially impact its China operations. It's closed half its stores, and even the ones which are open are seeing much lower footfall there as well. So there you have it. It's a demand story in large part, guys.
Well, Richard, I was going to say, what about the situation where you are? You mentioned it briefly, but how is Hong Kong responding to this economically and I suppose practically?
Well, we saw what happened with the retail sales. It didn't even include what was happening because it's a triple whammy, the trade war. Then we had the street protests. Now we got this. This is the third whammy, as it were. The latest I can tell you about is we've got this cruise ship, and I'm looking at it at the moment from my balcony. It's got 3,600 passengers on it. They've been quarantined, and this is after 3 travelers were found to have the virus. Now, these 3 travelers had actually left and disembarked from this ship in January, on the 24th of January. So they're being at the moment held, as are indeed passengers on a cruise ship in just off the coast of Japan as well. They tested positive for the disease. So that's what we have here. How do they address it? Well, we might find out a little bit more because we have Carrie Lam, the Hong Kong chief executive, talking in 5 minutes at a news briefing.
Richard, thanks very much indeed. Richard Salamat there, live in Hong Kong, reflecting on the latest we're getting on the spread of the virus and its economic impact. We're going to be talking about BNP Paribas next, following Wall Street in doing rather well. That's coming up here on Daybreak Europe. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. When it gives investors a peek under the hood this morning, GM will likely give them a disappointing forecast for 2020. GM already posted lackluster sales for the fourth quarter. Ford opened its books last night, and its shares have been in reverse ever since. Sales are lower, and it's had to pay more in pension benefits and for its new UAW contract. Disney had better news late yesterday. It picked up more subscribers to its recently launched Disney Plus streaming service and posted higher than expected profits. Stocks are coming off a rally. The Nasdaq is at a record high. Executives from the 5 biggest makers of e-cigarettes go before a House panel today to talk about vaping. Investors think Juul's value has been cut by 2/3 in the last 13 months. Mattress retailer Casper is preparing for its Wall Street debut. Its initial public offering will price after the close, with plans to raise almost $160 million. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Hello, I'm here to tell you that age really does bring wisdom, and you may still have plenty to contribute. At Eisner Amper, we're successful at helping business owners and entrepreneurs assess and plan for the future, as well as maximize where you are in the present. If you're curious about how to plan for both your professional and personal future, come and talk to us. I'm Lisa Stewart, principal in charge of the Center for Family Business Excellence, and I'd love to help you to find the right path forward. You can find us at eisneramper.com/family.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Give mealtimes a makeover. Give it some gusto. Give it crispy chili haddock with pak choy noodles or smoky Spanish chicken from just £2.98 per plate. Give it more than 40 delicious recipes to choose from every week and all the ingredients you need for cooking at home. Give your hob a workout. Go on, give it some gusto. Visit gusto.co.uk today and get 50% off your first box. Subscription auto-renews, cancel anytime.
Jennifer from Glasgow writes, I first set eyes on you when my brother brought you home. I wanted you. I didn't care what he'd say. He left the room. We couldn't stop ourselves. Delicious. Apart from the gherkins. Your 2 juicy patties, crisp lettuce, onions, cheese and Big Mac sauce. Utter perfection.
You can now spend even longer with the taste you love with the Grand Big Mac, but only until the 24th of March. Served after 11 a.m, subject to availability, participating restaurants only.
I pledge
to leave a gift in my will.
Cancer Research UK.
To live a fuller life.
To save more lives like my mum's.
Gifts in wills fund over 1/3 of Cancer Research UK's life-saving research.
I pledge to continue researching.
To find new treatments for patients.
To stop cancer from coming back.
Pledge right now to leave a gift in your will to Cancer Research UK, and together we will beat cancer for future generations. To find out more, search Cancer Research UK, pledge.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB digital radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
8:30 a.m. in London, 9:30 if you're listening in Paris, Frankfurt or Brussels. Good morning, everyone. I'm Naira Chahich.
And I'm Roger Hearing, and you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
30 minutes into the equity market open here in Europe, and we've recouped some of the losses that we had at the open to trade pretty much flat on the Stock 600. This after gains of 1.6% in yesterday's session. Across industry groups, you're seeing tech and construction and media outperform. No surprise given what we saw in tech stocks in the US session yesterday. Personal, household goods and oil and gas underperforming. Across regional equity benchmarks, 30 minutes ago we were looking at quite a bit of red on the screen. Right now the FTSE 100 is flat. The CAC 40 also unchanged. The DAX trading the same, sideways. The IBEX also going nowhere. The FTSE MIB just edging into the red, down 0.1%. The Nasdaq hit a record yesterday. Tech stocks recouping losses from the recent sell-off. Tesla, of course, doing particularly well in the past few days. If we look at US futures, though, they were lower earlier, but again, recouping the losses to trade flat on Dow and S&P futures. Nasdaq futures also unchanged. The market, at least the equity market, having a number of push and pull factors. We saw a lot of optimism yesterday, the S&P 500 having its best day since August, but really trying to assess where we go with the coronavirus and how much impact it might have on the economy. And if that impact is really bad, are we going to see the backstop of central banks? In fixed income, we were seeing risk off being reflected with yields dropping both in the US and in Europe. Right now, the 10-year Treasury yield is steady. It jumped 7 basis points yesterday, approaching a 160 handle now, just below that. Citigroup is taking off its bullish treasuries bet, but Bank of America sees a 125 handle in the first half of this year. The 10-year bund yield goes nowhere at -40. The 10-year gilt yield also steady. In FX, the yen was bid earlier, but again, those gains in the yen fading now. So a lot of push and pull in these markets. In G10 overall, the dollar not moving a whole lot. We did see the yuan earlier weaken through 7 again. Looking at the offshore right now, it is still weaker through 7. So there's some of the risk off still being reflected, of course, in the Asian session. We did see green on the screen, the first back-to-back gain since the coronavirus concerns. In oil, you're seeing a bid there. WTI up 0.7%, 49.96. Brent 54.40, up 0.8%. Roger.
Well, let's have a look at some of today's top stories. And the death toll from the Chinese virus is nearing 500. The number of cases now almost 25,000. But the World Health Organization says it hasn't yet shown much sign of mutation or caused a pandemic. The bulk of cases remain in China, and that sparked optimism that the impact of the outbreak could be limited.
In terms of the corporate reaction, Nike saying the coronavirus will have a material impact on China sales. It's closed about half its stores in the country, and those that remain open are operating reduced hours. Nike is the first big consumer company to cite a big impact from the outbreak. Most major corporations have said it's too soon to tell.
Walt Disney's crusade to become a streaming giant is off to a swift start. More on Disney's first quarter report from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Subscribers to the new Disney Plus online service soared to 26.5 million last quarter, a sign the 96-year-old company can challenge Netflix in an increasingly crowded market. The number was well above the 20.8 million subscribers projected by Bloomberg Consensus and has since jumped to 28.6 million. The surge for Disney Plus marks an early success for the company with 3 streaming services, Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and Hulu. CEO Bob Iger has firmly steered Disney into on-demand viewing from conventional TV. But it's coming at a cost. Disney said fiscal first quarter profit fell. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And Tesla's advance so far this year is over 100%. The shares are continuing their parabolic surge, rising 36% in just 2 days. It gives the electric car maker a market value greater than General Motors, Fiat Chrysler and Volkswagen combined. No other stock on the Nasdaq 100 is up even a quarter as much so far in 2020. And this did also impact the Asian session, with one China supplier to Tesla climbing by the 10% limit for a second day today, helping the Chinex index recoup post-Lunar New Year losses.
Well, staying with companies that are doing rather well, and unexpectedly, BNP Paribas has kept pace with gains at some of its biggest Wall Street banking rivals in the fourth quarter. The French bank posted a near 63% jump in fixed income trading revenue after a rebound in rates and Forex activity. Bloomberg's Caroline Conan spoke to the lender's CFO, Lars Machenel, in Paris.
The impact of that is compensating the effect of the lowering of the rates that happened in September. And so that's it. So there is a positive impact, but there was also a negative impact. However, the other negative impacts that happened earlier in the summer They don't have a compensating effect.
You can't really pass on those impacts on French clients, right?
At the rates at zero, we basically stay at the rates at zero.
But can you actually pass on the impact elsewhere in Europe to some other clients?
As we said, for our retail and individual customers, we basically don't go into negative territory. We are at zero.
What about the corporate client side?
If you take the institutional clients, there we are basically charging because the money they have, it's not considered as an investment, so that's a different stance.
Don't you think in this context it's actually a good time for cross-border consolidation? We heard, for example, recently from the ECB, Andrea Enria, saying that he will try to remove some of the barriers to these cross-border deals. So do you think it's time?
We are a pan-European bank and we want to continue to grow. But we don't need branches to do this. We have services, we have distribution channels, so that's fine. So if there is an advantage from what the ECB is saying on Europe, it will definitely also be a benefit for us, but it doesn't incite us to do an acquisition of branches and the likes. So we stay where we are.
So do you think regulators have to do more in order to really allow these cross-border mergers to possibly happen?
The concerns that we observe with respect to cross-border, it is indeed on a regulatory point. It's not necessarily from a supervisory point. So there is the question on saying, is liquidity, can it be transferred? Is it so that the products are similar between one country? If you go into a large country, your rules for mortgages are the same. In Europe, they are very different between each country. So that is why there is still a lot on the regulatory side to evolve for that to become realistic.
Brexit has finally happened just a few days ago. Are you in the process of moving some staff in Europe?
We have always been prepared. We were prepared a year ago when in March there was uncertainty of what could happen. So we are still prepared. Now there is discussion going on in what will be the end form. For BNP Paribas, the main reason why we are in the UK is to serve local clients. Yeah, we are in car leasing, insurance, all these activities which are locally. So if the rules are ironed out correctly, we will stay and we are present and we're very well positioned to help our UK clients.
So there's a movement at the moment. You're still in a wait-and-see attitude?
We have to wait until the rules are clarified for what it means and if basically the standard transactions can continue in the UK, which I assume they will.
And that was BNP Paribas CFO Lars Machenil speaking to Bloomberg's Caroline Connan. And right now, the share price, BNP's recouped some earlier weakness to trade flat at 49.275.
Let's get with the world news with Leanne Gerrans now. Hi, Leanne.
Good morning, Naira. Let's start in the US, where Donald Trump struck a triumphant tone in his State of Union address. He's staking his bid for re-election squarely on the strength of the US economy. Trump also struck a tone of optimism as he set out his case for another 4 years in office.
Jobs are booming, incomes are soaring, poverty is plummeting, crime is falling, confidence is surging, and our country is thriving and highly respected again.
His bitter feud with top Democrat Nancy Pelosi was apparent. He snubbed her outstretched hand as she was seen ripping up a copy of his speech. President Trump delivered his State of the Union address on the eve of his likely acquittal in the Senate's impeachment trial. Meanwhile, Democratic presidential hopeful Pete Buttigieg has come out marginally ahead in partial results from the troubled Iowa caucus. Bernie Sanders was a close second. Now back onto one of our top stories. As more cases of the coronavirus are reported outside China, 10 passengers on a luxury cruise ship in Japan have tested positive for the virus, and now more than 3,700 passengers and crew face spending the next fortnight quarantined on board the ship, which is moored near Yokohama. It comes as an 8-year-old passenger who had travelled on the vessel late last month tested positive after he arrived home from Hong Kong. And Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters have been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by a group of US lawmakers. Bloomberg's Ian Marlowe says this move could anger China amid continued tensions between the two countries and the coronavirus outbreak.
In a letter to the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, U.S. Senators Marco Rubio and James McGovern, the Republican and Democratic heads of the Congressional Executive Commission on China, recommended awarding the prize to the protesters. The lawmakers described them as the countless and often anonymous individuals who risked their lives, their health, their jobs, and their education to support a better future for Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, Ian Marlowe, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Roger.
Thanks so much indeed, Leanne. And coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, Ben Emmons, Managing Director for Global Macro Strategy at Medley Global Advisors, will be joining us here in the studio. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
More than just a game, baseball is big business. For the chief revenue officer of the New York Mets, this means overseeing complex operations, key financial drivers, and interpreting data to make critical decisions every day.
How is your business managing complexity? Cohn Resnick can help you improve performance through an integrated business planning strategy that optimizes your data, streamlines processes, and keeps you ahead of the competition. Explore more at cohnresnick.com/MLB. Cohn Resnick, Advisory Assurance Tax. Transform your game.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply to you.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Give same old a shake-up. Give it some gusto. Give your 4-dish repertoire the 40-dish treatment with all the ingredients you need delivered to your door. Give it new flavours to try, like creamy haddock linguine with tomato and chilli. Give everybody a hearty plateful from just £2.98 each. Give it weekly dinners sorted. Go on, give it some gusto. Visit gusto.co.uk today and get 50% off your first box. Subscription auto-renews, cancel anytime.
As the boss, I expect only the best for my office. Air conditioning, super comfortable seating, digital radio, and rear parking sensors. From dealing with deliveries to balancing the books, my new Citroën van, my office on the move, award-winning Citroën vans. Like you, they do it all, with £500 off during the February van event. Citroën. £500 discount inclusive of VAT on qualifying relay, dispatch and Berlingo vans ordered from 1st to 29th of February and registered by the 31st of March. Business users only. Full T's and C's at citroen.co.uk.
Having to deal with financial stuff can make you feel... Ah! But at Money Supermarket, we make you feel... Ah! That's because we go further to help you get money car. We don't just compare. We cut prices to help you get better car insurance deals. Get money car. Money Supermarket.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
5 is in! What a run! Touchdown, Kansas City!
Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs on winning their first Super Bowl in 50 years and second in franchise history.
50, Watkins, 10, chase to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown! That may be all she wrote!
While the NFL's 100th season may be over, football never stops on TuneIn. Search NFL Podcast to stay current with all the off-season wheeling and dealing.
And get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft in April.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now, a risk-on mood is sending European equities higher after initially opening in the red. It follows similar positive trading in Asia, with US futures now also pointing higher following yesterday's tech rally. Now, the Stock 600 is currently up 0.7%, similarly so for the DAX, while the CAC 40 is up 0.6%. Here in London, the FTSE has gained 0.5%. In stocks, I'm keeping a close eye on Danske Bank. It's down 3% in Copenhagen after recording a slump in profit following the money laundering scandal. On the other end of the spectrum, Smurfit Kappa gaining 6% here in London after full-year profit met estimates. Now, in bond markets, we are seeing the 10-year Treasury yield turning higher, now up 2 basis points at 1.62%. Similarly so for 10-year bund yields, up 2 basis points at negative 38. 10-year gilt yields at 59 basis points. In currencies, the offshore yuan now gaining, having weakened to 7 per dollar earlier. Currently, the offshore is at 6.98. The yen is standing pat at 109.6 against the greenback. The Bloomberg dollar spot index is also unchanged here in Europe. Sterling is bid, currently up 0.2% at 130. The euro is holding at 110. If we take a look at oil, it's coming off its one-year lows despite Russia rebuffing Saudi Arabia's call for a production cut. The JMMC is still meeting today, and we're now seeing WTI up more than 2%, well above $50 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Garens with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. Let's start with some breaking news. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam is holding a press briefing currently. She's just confirmed the city has 21 confirmed coronavirus cases. Hong Kong is also to further curb people flow at the border with China. Carrie Lam also says the virus may already be spreading in the community. We'll bring you more on that as we get it. But more on that virus, the numbers from the coronavirus outbreak do keep rising. The death toll is closing in on 500. China says there are more than 24,000 confirmed cases and several thousand people are being quarantined on cruise ships in Japan and Hong Kong. Singapore reported 6 new cases. Emergency services in Australia are switching their focus from fires to flooding. Some areas are forecast to have the heaviest rainfall in years in the coming week. With 62 wildfires still burning in New South Wales and large parts of the country in the grip of drought, the range should bring relief and extinguish most of the fires on the eastern seaboard in the next coming weeks. And police are investigating claims that former Prime Minister David Cameron's bodyguard left his gun in a plane toilet. A passenger apparently found found the weapon and handed it to flight attendants. The Sun newspaper says passports belonging to the close protection officer and Cameron were also discovered along with the gun. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Now let's get back to our top story, the coronavirus and the impact on markets. And what we've seen actually in the past 20 minutes or so is quite a turnaround in sentiment, because equities did open lower in Europe, and right now the Stock 600 is higher by almost 0.7%. The 10-year Treasury yield, which was earlier dipping, is up 2 basis points, 162 handle after jumping 7 basis points yesterday. Ben Emmons, Managing Director for Global Macro Strategy at Medley Global Advisors, joins us now down the line. Ben, great to have you with us. So we were seeing a little bit of a hit to risk sentiment earlier in the session. That's now starting to turn around. This despite the fact that we're seeing yet more cases. We've heard some worrying news from Hong Kong's Carrie Lam in the past few minutes. The PMIs in Europe haven't showed particular strength. Italy better than expected. Spain worse than expected. What's behind this resilience in the European session in markets today? Does it have anything to do with investors expecting central banks to provide a backstop to risk assets?
Good morning, Naira. Thank you very much for having us back. I would say that is a background story that's at least providing, I say, an insurance to markets that what we're going through right now with this virus and the uncertainty, what it causes for economic activity in the future, that is somewhat offset by that central bank liquidity. And we've been used to this for many years, but every time it does work, and it does show that markets take the cue from that support. I also say that it is still the data that's coming through that's showing resilience, as you say, from current developments, right? In other words, there's a recovery still going on from the trade war. I think, too, that markets are looking at this saying, well, if that's strong enough, whatever then happens with this virus, that will be the future. For now, we're trading the data. So I do think that matters as well.
Now, Ben, I mean, it's a very interesting situation to try and work out what the effects are. And one of the interesting things I know in your notes you talked about, this is a managed market in China we're dealing with. Do you think what the PBOC is doing is enough? Is that perhaps behind it, that this is what's going on, a sense of confidence perhaps that the PBOC will do anything that it takes to get this under control?
I think that's absolutely the case, indeed, because they've come out with a decent amount of liquidity injection, and they have done this in the past. Let's take the 2015-16 situation, and I think that's what markets are looking at. Like, yes, it will be managed, but the PBOC is willing to go maybe beyond that number. That was at that time something like 2.5 trillion yuan or so. That will maybe be even larger, because this virus is really spread around China, and the Chinese economy seems to be currently in a standstill, right? So, and there's from the top level real concerns about the potential instability of the Chinese economy. So yes, I think markets are very clearly focused on that the PBOC will do the Chinese version of what it takes.
Yeah, Ben, as we've been talking, I've been chatting to one of our Markets Live contributors and trying to get a sense of why we've had this sentiment shift in the past 20 minutes. And she said it could reflect a headline that's come out of one of the UK news outlets talking about a significant breakthrough in the search for a coronavirus vaccine, without speculating perhaps too much on the moves in the past 20 minutes. Do you get the sense that this is an equity market that wants to jump on any good news?
Yeah, I think that's the case, right? The equity market remains optimistic about the economic scenarios and recovery, and then takes these headlines as a cue of like, well, there will be a vaccine, so the impact over the medium term will be mitigated as a result of the resolving this virus crisis, whereas the bond market and the commodity markets have been far more pessimistic, maybe partly driven by a low inflation prospect, and then in addition of, let's say, overcapacity in the commodities market. So I think it's sort of the economy, yes, and obviously the virus, we're going into a very critical phase right now. About 2 weeks ago almost is when most of the virus outbreaks started, so the incubation period ends. So this will be a period where markets are very sensitive to these headlines. If there is a breakthrough on a antidote or a vaccine, then that will be obviously a major turnaround for whatever comes from here.
Now, I suppose part of the strategy now is to look beyond this, to look slightly further forward. Now, I know you've talked about possibly a targeted short wage on the US dollar against some EM currencies when markets begin to recover. Do you still think that's a good position?
I think it's a good position because there's two stories there. And on the one hand, we have the flight to safety that we may still deal with somewhat over the next period. And it seems that the yen and the Swiss franc have been more in favor, perhaps because markets look at this virus that could affect the U.S. economy really because of the delay of the phase one deal and the implementation of the phase one as a result of the virus that could actually be negative for the U.S. economy near term. And on the other hand, as you say, there is opportunity in emerging markets because the ongoing recovery from the trade war from last year is actually favoring a variety of emerging markets that are sensitive to trade. Now, on that last part, we're obviously dealing maybe with some setback on this because of the virus, but nevertheless, I think that the dollar is what I call targeted short against a basket of these types of currencies, and probably won't see such broad dollar strength overall, and that seems to be playing out right now.
Is now the time, Ben, to also short treasuries, particularly the 10-year? Citigroup thinks so, but Bank of America thinks we'll get to a 125 handle in the first half of the year.
Yeah, it's interesting to see these estimates because earlier in the year there were a group of people that thought that the treasury yield could go as low as 1.2, and as others were more optimistic, they were going back to 2 to 2.25. I'm more in that camp because I do think we'll have economic recovery ahead of us, and I'm not so sure if you should go short per se because of the inflation picture currently, but I do think that you want to be at least in a fixed income portfolio to start underweighting treasury duration because you will deal with the trough here again, and that's what it looks like because it is ultimately a recovery coming from this. The virus is not going to go on forever, and the trade war recovery was already on the way, so it does point to my view in the future higher rates.
In markets, Ben, where do you think we will see the recovery from this virus thing if it comes? Where will it begin to be apparent in markets?
It will be for sure in the very cyclical sectors like transportation and air travel and those types of sectors because that's where we're currently seeing the shutdown of activity quite dramatically. Right, there has been, I think, reportedly almost 12,000 flights canceled into China and from China. So that once that changes, there will be a pickup of activity. The other parts will be more on the manufacturing side because the supply chain impact that we're seeing currently, particularly from Asia to China, will reverse. Right, there's currently a little bit of a shutdown on both sides of production or overcapacity reported in some of the Asian countries as a result of not being able to export to China and vice versa. Yeah. That, I think, is the other part. So that's where the recovery will take place.
Ben Emmons, great to have you with us, Managing Director for Global Macro Strategy at Medley Global Advisors. Thank you so much. European equities in the green now, up 0.6%. The 10-year Treasury yield at 161. This is Bloomberg.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Keys, check. Phone, check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
World, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
What we're now seeing for the first time is this facade of absolute unity beginning to break down in the EU.
We expect that there will be some type of slowdown recession beyond 2019.
The European banking system, although recovering, hasn't recovered, and there are areas of fragility.
We've seen this before, trade talks that lead nowhere, and then tariffs. We just swing from one to the other, and markets get caught in the middle.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe with Anna Edwards and Matt Miller on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning from London. I'm Anna Edwards.
And from Berlin, I'm Matt Miller. You're listening to Daybreak Europe on London DAB Digital Radio.
Yes, you are. And it is Wednesday morning, an hour into the European equity trading session. And Matt, we need to check the markets because we do that every 15 minutes. We've had some breaking news across the Bloomberg as well. Euro area January services PMI 52.5. The preliminary estimate was 52.2. So slightly better data than anticipated for the Euro area on the services side of things. That, as we're all searching for the bottom in the manufacturing cycle, of course, and keeping an eye on what's going on in China with that in mind. And let's talk about what's happening in China as we look at the European equity markets this morning. The Stock 600 up by 0.7%. The CAC 40 up 0.5%. The Xetra DAX up 0.6%. And the FTSE 100 up by around 0.5%. US futures also pointing higher by around 0.5% this morning. And it's an interesting session because at the start of the session, European equity markets were weaker. US futures were weaker. Then around 25 minutes into the European session, something lit the touch paper and we saw European equity markets and US futures turn tail, turn more risk on, go more positive. So we've been looking at what the catalyst for that could be, and perhaps it was a report out of Sky News that suggested some progress is being made on a coronavirus vaccine. So we'll be interested into probing into that story. But for the moment, that is the picture we have on European equity markets, a more positive one than at the start around an hour ago. In conjunction with the moves higher in equities, we've seen some bonds selling off, and so the US 10-year yield now stands at 1.6. So over that 1.6 mark again, 1.6077. Oil prices a little bit firmer this morning. Quite a lot firmer for Brent. $55 a barrel now, up by 2% compared to the previous close. The dollar is fairly flat. Euro fairly flat. The pound fairly flat. Slight upward bias, up by 0.1% at 130.42, Matt.
Yeah, so real turnaround there in stocks. Very interesting stuff indeed. And as usual, we're looking for an explanation. I had kind of a silly thought that maybe it was because Carrie Lam showed up to a press conference without her mask. It was so strange when she wore the mask in the first place, right? Because she banned the wearing of face masks in Hong Kong like 6 months ago. And then all of a sudden she and her entire dais were wearing masks. But now she's not. Maybe people are feeling a little bit more relaxed in Hong Kong.
I liked your the fact that was something that crossed your mind. But then looking at the things she was actually saying, it didn't seem as if she was giving very positive messaging. She was still saying the situation is worrying. The next 14 days are very critical. So all of that. Even if the fact she wasn't wearing a mask gave a positive message, the things she was saying still sounded pretty negative. But Matt, let's get an update from Hong Kong itself.
Yeah, let's go right now to Stephen Engel, who is standing by in Hong Kong. What do you think? What's the feeling there? Give us the rundown first off.
Well, first of all, we're getting lines right now from the Hong Kong chief executive, Carrie Lam, who resisted calls by hospital officials over the last few days to completely close the border. But she did acquiesce a little bit yesterday and closed 10 of 13 checkpoints with China. But now we're getting word that she's going to require a 14-day home quarantine of all China arrivals effective this Saturday. So there's 3 more days still, and that includes Hong Kong residents and non-residents. She's calling these next 14 days very critical and says the situation now in Hong Kong is worrying. And she revealed that there are now 21 confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus here in Hong Kong, and she says it may already be spreading throughout the community. She also announced that she's shutting down the Kai Tak and Ocean Terminal cruise terminals. There is a cruise ship that, several thousand people. This is not the Yokohama one in Japan. This is another cruise cruise ship that's been here in Hong Kong, and they are all quarantined as well because previous passengers on the previous ship had also come down with the novel coronavirus. So Hong Kong continues to be on a state of alert right now.
Yeah, thousands of people now quarantined on cruise ships in Japan or off Japan and off the coast of Hong Kong as well. And Stephen, then we see these lines coming out of the UK just in the last 40 minutes or so, talking about new research and the possibility of starting animal testing quicker than had been anticipated.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is a Sky News report I think you're referring to, that they might start animal testing on this coronavirus. I have to offer some caution on this, because there have been others who have said that others have started or have come up with some sort of vaccination or the like. But I've heard from other virologists who say, such a vaccine could take months, if not years. So I'd be a little cautious on the hopefulness of this.
What about on the death rate, Stephen? I mean, outside of China, it's extremely low. I think I heard someone say, so less even than 2%. Is it?
Or 2 people.
So 2 people, yes. I heard it was 0.18%. I'm not sure if that's if he meant 1.8% or 0.18%, but regardless, it's incredibly low. Is there less hysteria? I hate using that word, but is there less? Are people freaking out less?
Well, for sure, what the World Health Organization came out and said that the spread of this virus can be minimal and slow if the outbreak is fought at the source. And the source is Wuhan and Hubei province. Because of those 492 deaths, 490 of them are in China and 98% of them are in Hubei province. So that's a 65 more death increase from yesterday's numbers. But one thing that we heard from Health Ministry was that more than 80% of those deaths are 60 years of age and older. The mortality rate of this also is about 2% compared to the confirmed cases. 10% was the mortality rate for SARS. Granted, that might have been far more underreported. But one thing also keep in mind, we're hearing that there are more than 252,000 people in China under surveillance for the virus.
All right, Stephen, thanks very much. Stephen Engel there, reporter on the ground out of Hong Kong.
Thanks very much to Stephen for that. Let's turn to the market reaction to everything that's developing in Hong Kong and indeed in mainland China, coinciding with that news around the possible breakthrough and caveating that as our colleague Stephen Engel suggested we might want to. In the race for a vaccine, we had these lines out from Sky earlier that there could have been a breakthrough there. Markets suddenly flipped the risk-on switch and European stocks trade higher. Let's bring in Bloomberg's macro strategist Laura Cooper from the Markets Live team. That seemed to be about the same time, Laura. So do we really credit that with turning around US futures and European stocks?
So we are seeing European equities pare back earlier losses and US equity futures are tipping higher. And you're right, that did coincide with these headlines. And I think that just shows just how much markets really want to put this corona scare behind us and just how much risk sentiment is being driven by these fears. But like your earlier colleague just mentioned, that, when we kind of go through the story itself, the Sky News reported story, it's saying that the vaccine will be too late for this current outbreak, but crucial for the next one. So I think the bounce that we're seeing in markets right now is exceptionally overdone, just given the risk that still remains.
Premature,
yes.
Yeah.
What are the other concerns for this market? I mean, has Brexit gone to the back burner?
I think at this stage, Brexit is in the back burner. I think it will really be up to June whether we see any kind of clarity on whether we will get this divergence away from the EU in terms of WTO regulations and how that will play out. Certainly, near-term perspective, I don't think markets are taking Brexit concerns on the trade front into focus.
What about the earnings season, Laura? Is the earnings season managing to cut through here? Because we see individual movers clearly under pressure as a result. I mean, although a rising tide does lift many boats and shares in this case. So Siemens was having a tough time. Now it's down just 0.7%, but it really underperforms today as a result of the earnings story.
And I think certainly I don't want to discount what earnings are doing to the broader overall market performance, but ultimately it does come down to risk sentiment and just this broader macro theme that we are seeing around this uncertainty with respect to how this coronavirus will play out, just potentially the hit to growth that could how that could transpire.
You notice that we have a lot of central bank speakers lined up. What do you think central bank policy is going to mean for markets in the next few days?
In the next few days, I mean, certainly we saw RBA Governor Lowe overnight warn of the risks of lower interest rates, and he could potentially be an outlier in this current environment because I think central bankers are still pointing to the risks tilted to the downside. It's likely that the bias remains for easing, and so central banks are likely to have this cautionary tone that could lead to markets beginning to price in greater cuts for 2020, notably if these virus fears and the growth recovery doesn't gain momentum.
Okay, Laura, thanks very much. Bloomberg macro strategist Laura Cooper.
Let's get over to Leanne Gerrans now with your global news headlines. Leanne?
Good morning, Matt. Let's start in the US, where Donald Trump struck a triumphant tone in his State of the Union address. The president says he is building the world's most prosperous and inclusive society. He's staking his bid for re-election squarely on the strength of the US economy.
America's fortunes are on the rise, and America's future is blazing bright. The years of economic decay are over.
It was a deeply partisan affair. The president turned his back on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi as she offered to shake his hand. Trump delivered his State of the Union address on the eve of his likely acquittal in the Senate's impeachment trial. Meanwhile, Democratic presidential hopeful Pete Buttigieg has come out marginally ahead in partial results from the troubled Iowa caucus. Bernie Sanders was a close second. Now back to one of our top stories. The death toll from China's coronavirus is nearing 500. The number of cases now almost 25,000. As more cases of the virus are reported outside of China, 10 people on a cruise ship moored near the Japanese port of Yokohama have tested positive for the disease and have been taken to hospital. Bloomberg's Isabel Reynolds reports.
A total of 273 people will be tested aboard the vessel. Those who have not been infected will be required to stay on the ship for up to 14 days to avoid any spread of the infection, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said. Checks on the Diamond Princess began after a Hong Kong man who'd been a passenger on the ship tested positive for the virus. In Tokyo, Isabel Reynolds, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And emergency services in Australia are switching their focus from fires to flooding. Some areas are forecast to have their heaviest rainfall in years in the coming week, with 62 wildfires still burning in New South Wales and large parts of the country suffering from drought. Rain should bring relief and extinguish most of the fires on the eastern seaboard in the coming weeks. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Anna.
Thanks very much, Leanne. Lots to come, lots to watch out for today. When it comes to earnings season, we've had quite a lot of earnings reports already this morning. The likes of Siemens, for example, Danske giving us numbers, Vodafone. But the earnings season does continue. BNP Paribas earlier this morning also reported its numbers. We're going to get numbers from GlaxoSmithKline later, as well as Merck and General Motors in the auto space. There are rate decisions coming up today. Central banks in Brazil, Iceland and Poland to report their deliberations and the results of that. And we heard from Thailand earlier. And who did you say?
I said we have a speaker. We have Christine Lagarde this afternoon speaking as well. So central bank activity, as Laura Cooper tells us on the MLive blog. Type MLIV go if you want to get a little bit more on that. Coming up next, we're going to talk about big parts of China still on lockdown amid the coronavirus. Some manufacturers, though, are still humming away. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services.
trends. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Are you looking for senior care for your mom or dad but don't know where to start? Hi, I'm Joan London with The Place for Mom. Nobody knows your parent or loved one better than you, and nobody knows senior living better than the experts at A Place for Mom. It's a free service, and we've helped thousands of families find the right place for their mom or dad. There's a place for answers, a place for mom. Call today.
Call A Place for Mom at 1-800-391-1755. That's 1-800-391-1755.
Welcome back to The Dog Show. Up next we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now let's see him in action. Look how he makes eye contact with his person. That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance so common with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Briggs.
Now, the coronavirus prompting investors to shake up their strategies, at least in the short term. Erin Gibbs is president and CIO of Gibbs Wealth Management. She joins us from New York. Erin, I just wonder, China markets had a good day yesterday. U.S. equity markets seemingly today pretty positive, rebounding. What will it take to get a pullback on these very resilient equity markets?
So I think we're just going to see a lot of volatility where we see these down days and up days. And I think that today what we saw in the Asian markets is largely just sort of more of a shorter term bounce after we saw such a disastrous day the day before with all that sort of pent up negative selling action coming off the holidays. So I think we're probably going to continue to see more of these down days, particularly in emerging market and Asian markets, and then more of a mix in the U.S. markets. So right now, U.S. equities are really priced for perfection. We're looking at 19 times forward earnings. These are levels that we haven't seen in 18 years. We're talking, the 2002 boom. And so it really won't take much for us to have those nasty down days that we've been seeing over the past week. And then hopefully, eventually, a good rebound as we still have solid economic footing.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters here in London, I'm Caroline Hedger with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. So European stocks head higher this morning, up 0.7%, having fluctuated in early trading. Now, despite the fears over the impact of the coronavirus, the MSCI All-Country World Index up 0.3%, and Asian stocks gained for a second day in a row overnight. In terms of stocks we're watching, Imperial Brands is down over 8% right now after abandoning its profit forecast. Also, some knock-on effect from Nike's warning about the impact of coronavirus on Adidas and Puma. Their shares both fell 1% each. BNP Paribas, meanwhile, the big story reporting FICC trading jumped 63% in the fourth quarter, but it did cut its profitability target, so BNP's shares are down just slightly this morning. As for US futures, for the S&P 500 index, they are up 0.6% this hour. In the spot FX markets, dollar, euro, little changed. Cable climbs just a little. The yuan trades at 6.98 to the US dollar. In the bond markets, the yield on 10-year treasuries has gained 2 basis points to 1.62%. German benchmark yields also advancing at negative 38 basis points. And finally, WTI crude pops 2.5%. We're above the $50 a barrel mark as OPEC plus countries hold a second day of talks in Vienna. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Gerrans with all the world and national news. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. The death toll from China's coronavirus is nearing 500. The number of cases now almost 25,000. But the World Health Organization is saying it hasn't yet shown much sign of mutation or caused a pandemic. The bulk of cases remaining in China, that sparked optimism that the impact of the outbreak will be limited. A South African court has ordered the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma after he failed to show up for a corruption trial. Zuma is facing 16 charges, including allegedly taking bribes from arms dealers during his 9-year rule. He denies any wrongdoing. Zuma's attorney says health problems prevented him from attending the trial. And it's claimed 1 in 14 people no longer carry a wallet, and 20% of those who do use one don't actually keep cash in it. The UK-wide survey was carried out by PayPal. The rise in contactless cards and mobile payment apps means many of us are less reliant on cash. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powers by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Jan Gerrans. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It is 9:20 in the city. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by opinion columnist Shuli Wren, who's writing about the economic impact of the coronavirus outbreak. And Shuli, it's interesting on a day when we hear from companies like Nike, for example, that they're putting a hold on production there. And there are other companies I know that are rushing to get their employees back to work. What's the impact look like to you?
Absolutely. As of this week, 2/3 of the Chinese economy is still shut. Honghai Precision, basically the Apple iPhone assembler, said that they lowered this year's sales forecast as well, right? So to be sure, many factories remain closed, and unfortunately in Zhejiang and in the southern Zhejiang and Guangdong provinces, which are basically manufacturing hubs, they extended the Lunar New Year holiday all the way to February 9th. And depending on how the virus is going, there might be more extensions. Having said that, there are key manufacturing sectors that Beijing deems as very important that have been operating throughout. For instance, some chip manufacturing bases, even outside of Wuhan, they have been operating full on throughout the Chinese New Year, throughout the whole outbreak. So I think it all depends on which sectors we're talking about. If you are into the flash memory chip manufacturing, then you might be full on. But if you are making sports shoes, then no.
Okay, right. So it's all part of Xi's. So bearing in mind Xi's Made in China 2025 blueprint, you say certain sectors are still up and humming, whereas others have been furloughed. Let me ask you about where this leaves the manufacturing sector, because actually for manufacturers there might be the opportunity to make up some of the lost ground later in the year once and assuming there is a hold or control over coronavirus by then. But it's the services sector that might not be able to make up the lost ground.
Absolutely. I mean, the services sector, they just have to suck up the loss, right? People are still not going to restaurants, etc. And even in manufacturing, it depends. Say if Tesla can continue operating in its factories, right? And then all the other automakers not being able to open their factories, then it's a huge advantage for Tesla. So at this point, I think it's all about who has the government's ear, who has better inventory management, and these can be huge winners, to be honest.
So what do you think about the continuation of this? I mean, how much longer are we going to see so many people? You pointed out February 9th is the last day for the extension, but isn't the government worried if everyone goes back, the spread is going to get worse, or do they think they have it contained?
Absolutely. I think traders in China, there's this one number that they're looking at every morning, which gets released at 6:30 in the morning in Beijing time, which is the Hubei province incremental number of cases. And this morning it's over 3,000. So people are trying to see if China can actually contain the Hubei outbreak at all, right? Basically other provinces, they are not open for business if Hubei does not have it under control. So that's the key number that everyone is looking at. And so far, it doesn't seem like China really has it under the grip, even though they have sending military personnel, military doctors, etc. So we'll have to see. I mean, even in Hong Kong, right? The Hong Kong government said that the public services workers will have to work all the way at home until February 16th. So I think the February 9th deadline is a very soft deadline. And then some say, like real estate developers, they said that they are not allowed to open for business until February 20th, the earliest. And then as to when they will open, it depends on how the virus goes. So I think February 9th is a soft deadline.
Shuli, thanks very much. Bloomberg opinion columnist Shuli Wren. You can read more on this and other stories on the coronavirus and many other topics from Bloomberg Opinion at bloomberg.com/opinion and on the terminal by typing OPIN GO.
Straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, we are going to hear from Alexander Dejuniak, Director General of IATA, the International Air Transport Association. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. FanDuel picked Scientific Games to provide the technology for its sports wagering and online casino businesses in the U.S. as legalized betting expands across the country. According to a person familiar with the terms, the company will provide the betting platform in current states where FanDuel takes wagers and in new ones that come online. The company already provides similar services to FanDuel's parent, Flutter Entertainment, in Europe. Dick's Sporting Goods is hoping to win over more female customers. The largest U.S. sporting goods chain unveiled a wide-ranging set of efforts to support women's sports. They include a $5 million grant to the U.S. Soccer Foundation, a sponsorship of U.S. softball as it rejoins the Olympics, and retail changes at stores around the country to expand its selection of women's and girls' products. With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Witham offers private equity expertise to address the advisory, audit, and tax needs of your fund's portfolio companies.
Hi, I'm Bill Hageman, Witham's proud CEO. Witham's private equity specialists understand the unique challenges facing PE firms. We work hand in hand with sponsors and their portfolio companies to help maximize the value of their investments with our world-class advisory, audit, and tax solutions, and industry expertise in key growth sectors such as healthcare, manufacturing, and real estate.
Visit Witham.com/PE for more information.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The sound of a Halifax customer who used to worry she wasn't saving enough, but is now saving the change on every morning brew. Switch on Save the Change, and when you use your Halifax Visa debit card, we'll round up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your chosen Halifax savings account.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
5 is in! What a run! Touchdown, Kansas City!
Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs on winning their first Super Bowl in 50 years and second in franchise history.
50, Watkins, 10, chase to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown! That may be all she wrote!
While the NFL's 100 100th season may be over, football never stops on TuneIn. Search NFL Podcast to stay current with all the off-season wheeling and dealing. And get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft in April. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB Digital Radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Good morning from the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Anna Edwards. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. It is 10:30 if you're in Paris or Berlin with Matt. It's 9:30 if you're here in London with me. And European equity markets then, Matt, getting a boost around 8:25 UK time. We saw European equity markets tick upwards or turn tail and shoot upwards, as did US futures.
Yeah, and we're getting some breaking news now on the UK economy. January services PMI coming in at 53.9. That's better than the preliminary reading, which was 52.9. So it looks a little bit better than had been anticipated by the preliminary reading. Anna, you see moves in the GBP, the British pound.
Just flagging that sterling seems to be getting a boost this morning. It's certainly on the rise as a result of that, up by 0.2% right now. So not huge moves, but turning a little more positive on that data point.
All right, and did we go through the other data? Did you already?
No,
talk
do you
about
want
the
to?
miraculous turnaround?
Some of that turnaround, yeah. Do we credit that with these news lines out of the UK around the possibility of testing a new vaccine on coronavirus on animals as early as next week? How quickly that could come to market, though, is a very different question. But that didn't seem to stop European equity markets and US futures pushing up a little higher. Oil prices also higher on the back of that. So now Brent is up by 3.1% higher at 55.63. Yield on the US 10-year up at 1.63%, just solidifying that move into risk on assets that we've seen as a result of those more recent lines on coronavirus, and the dollar fairly flat right now.
All right, let's get to BNP Paribas keeping pace with its Wall Street rivals, or it looks to me more like outpacing its Wall Street rivals. A 63% jump in fixed income trading revenue for the fourth quarter. The picture is less rosy over at Danske Bank. The Danish lenders had slipped in European trading this morning after profits slumped in the wake of the money laundering scandal, and there was a warning for next year as well, a reduction in the forecast. For more on European bank earnings, we're joined by Bloomberg Intelligence's senior EU banks analyst Jonathan Tice. Let's talk BNP first. Were any other Wall Street banks doing 62% increases in FICC trading?
Yeah, there was one that did over 100 actually. And if you strip out a one-off, they were up about 30-odd%. So they're lagging the US peers. And again, they had a very bad 4Q 2018.
So they're not keeping pace.
No, they're not quite keeping pace. But to be fair, I mean, consensus was looking for 25% rebound. It's about 35%. So it's a decent number. I mean, the stock's been down most of the morning, but just joined in the rally. I think with BNP, they were one of the best performers last year, stock-wise. It's now kind of a widely owned bank, and they were always going to struggle to beat expectations that have risen quite nicely. Also, a little bit disappointing on costs.
Yeah, talk to us about costs, because they've been targeting cost cuts. A lot of banks talk about cost cuts, of course, and the jaws conversation I know we have often. And I think the CFO talked to our colleague Caroline Conan about that. So what's the expectation around cost cutting?
Well, I think what they've done is had a decent 4Q FIC, and they're paying people. So the reason
fixed income currency commodities did well.
Yeah, exactly. The reason that expenses are higher is that they're taking advantage of some of that extra profitability. But further down the line, I mean, their cost-income ratio is way too high, as with all banks in Europe pretty much. Revenue continues to be a problem, and there's very little growth, which means you've got to cut costs.
As far as Danske Bank is concerned, how bad is it there? I mean, I know they came out and said they're only expecting now to have 8 billion kroner in net income, 8 to 10 billion kroner in net income, which is about, I guess the high end is in line with the estimate.
Yeah, I mean, for them, they're sticking to their 2023 targets, but they pointed out that this year's going to be pretty dire. Fees down, flat interest income. Costs for them, clearly, with the whole money laundering issue. I mean, that's what's been plaguing the stock. But the underlying fundamentals are still pretty soggy, and there's not much loan growth at home domestically either. So I think, again, as with most other European banks, the problem is there's little or no top-line growth, so they need to attack the cost base. And Nordic banks are lucky because they tend to have very low cost of risk, but even the cost of risk, they've had to guide higher.
I got to ask quickly because I didn't get to talk to you last week after Deutsche Bank came out with its numbers, and the market seemed to... Well, look, Christian Saving, the CEO, wrote in an email to employees that now it's time for the growth phase of the plan. So that seemed incredibly bullish to me. What was your takeaway?
I completely agree with you. I mean, there were a lot of people scratching their heads because the stock's been so strong, and on the day, I think people were expecting maybe it to be a bit weak, and it was up quite nicely. So I think he's probably getting carried away with the fact that share prices stopped falling. But in terms of growth, it's very hard to see how they can do anything. I mean, BNP, look at FIC. BNP is a kind of bond issuance champion now in Europe. You've got Barclays there. But their peers domestically have got bigger and stronger. So I struggle with the growth story there. But the good news is that they've stabilised it. And at least we understand what we're looking at now. We've kind of got a base run rate for the earnings power of that bank. But yeah, I think growth is a ways off.
Thanks so much. Thanks very much for joining us, Jonathan. EU Banks analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, Jonathan Tice.
Let's get your other global news headlines. For that, we go to Leanne Garrett. Leanne?
Matt, good morning. The death toll from China's coronavirus is nearing 500. The number of cases now almost 25,000. But the World Health Organization is saying it hasn't yet shown much sign of mutation or caused a pandemic. The bulk of cases remaining in China. That sparked optimism that the impact of the outbreak will be limited. Now to the US, where Donald Trump struck a triumphant tone in his State of the Union address. He's staking his bid for re-election squarely on the strength of the US economy. Trump also struck a tone of optimism as he set out his case for another 4 years in office.
Jobs are booming, incomes are soaring, poverty is plummeting, crime is falling, confidence is surging, and our country is thriving and highly respected again.
Trump's bitter feud with top Democrat Nancy Pelosi was apparent. He snubbed her handshake, and she was then seen ripping up a copy of his speech. President Trump delivered his State of the Union address on the eve of his likely acquittal in the Senate's impeachment trial. Meanwhile, Democratic presidential hopeful Pete Buttigieg has come out marginally ahead in partial results from the troubled Iowa caucus. Bernie Sanders was a close second. And emergency services in Australia are switching their focus from fires to flooding. Bloomberg's Jason Scott says some areas are forecast to have their heaviest rainfall in years in the coming week.
With 62 wildfires still burning in New South Wales state alone and large parts of the country in the grip of drought, the rain will bring significant drought relief and should extinguish most of the fires on Australia's eastern seaboard during the next week. Part of Queensland state are already flooding, and Sydney should have its wettest week since at least last March. In Canberra, Jason Scott, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Anna.
Leanne, thank you very much. Now with your morning sports news, here's Lewis Mason.
Liverpool's youngest ever starting lineup, with an average age of just 19 years old, beat Shrewsbury at Anfield in their FA Cup fourth-round replay. An own goal from Roshan Williams was enough to secure a last 16 tie against Chelsea. Wayne Rooney will be reunited with Manchester United in the FA Cup last 16 after he scored a penalty to help his Derby side beat Northampton 4-2. Alan Saint-Maximin scored an extra-time winner for Newcastle to break the hearts of League One Oxford in a 3-2 win. Reading and Birmingham are also through after penalty shootout victories against Cardiff and Coventry respectively. And England's cricketers are 1-0 down in their one-day international series against South Africa after a 7-wicket loss in Cape Town. Captain Quinton de Kock inspired his side, scoring 107 runs as the hosts chased down a score of 259. The next match takes place on Friday.
Top story of the day, Mookie Betts and David Price heading from Boston to LA to play for the Dodgers in exchange for Alex Verdugo. The Dodgers also cleared some cap space, sending Kenta Maeda to Minnesota and Jock Peterson to Anaheim. From the hockey scoreboard, the Islanders get the overtime win over the Stars, Beauvillier scoring the game winner, 4-3 the final. Alexander Ovechkin, the natural hat-trick in the third period, leading the Caps past the Kings 4-2. It's Ovi's third hat trick in the last 6 games and his 27th overall in his career. Bruins shut out the Canucks 4-0. Devils fall in the shootout to the Canadiens 5-4. And the Sharks take care of the Flames in Calgary 3-1. I'm Pete Fox at your Bloomberg NBC World Sports Update.
Thanks very much for that, Pete. Coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, David Bloom, Global Head of FX Strategy at HSBC, joins us next to discuss the risk-on rally in today's markets and how he sees the Chinese economy faring under all of the existing pressures. US futures and European stocks both pointing higher. Stock 600 up by 1.1%. US futures point to an open in the US on Wall Street that will be stronger by between 0.8% and 1.5%. So we'll see how that transpires. European equity markets bouncing this morning then. This is Bloomberg.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba, please be done. Over and over and over and over and over. Then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
In the world of financial advice, speed, clarity, and foresight aren't just nice to have, they're required to survive. Adipar provides advisors the real-time portfolio reporting and insights required to realize the goals and personal potential for their clients. Trusted by thousands of wealth advisors, from family offices, RIAs, and large financial institutions, Adipar helps you make better, more informed investment decisions. To learn more, visit us at addepar.com.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at bevel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, Every journey matters.
As the boss, I expect only the best for my office. Air conditioning, super comfortable seating, digital radio, and rear parking sensors. From dealing with deliveries to balancing the books, my new Citroën van, my office on the move. Award-winning Citroën vans. Like you, they do it all. With £500 off during the February van event. Citroën. £500 discount inclusive of VAT. On qualifying relay dispatch and Berlingo vans ordered from 1st to 29th of February and registered by the 31st of March. Business users only. Full T's and C's at citroen.co.uk.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
5 is in! What a run! Touchdown, Kansas City!
Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs on winning their first Super Bowl in 50 years and second in franchise history.
50, Watkins, 10, chase to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown! That may be all she wrote!
While the NFL's 100th season may be over, football never stops on TuneIn. Search NFL Podcast to stay current with all the off-season wheeling and dealing. And get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft in April.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown!
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
On the goal line, Martin scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Lines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters here in London, I'm Caroline Hepker with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now, European stocks powering ahead this hour, up by 1.1% on the US stocks 600. This after we reversed early losses at the start of the trading session, essentially on hopes for a breakthrough in fighting the coronavirus. Asian stocks gained for a second day in a row overnight. Central banks in Singapore, Australia and Japan have all said that they're ready to ease if needed to combat the virus impact. In terms of individual stocks, Imperial Brand has slumped this morning after it abandoned its profit forecast. Also, we had BNP Paribas, the European bank, share price up by 1.8% this hour after it reported FICC trading jumped 63% in the fourth quarter. But on the downside, it did cut its profitability targets, and still the share price though is up right now. US futures for the S&P 500 index up by 0.9%, so that positivity there. In the spot FX markets, not huge moves. Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index index a little bit positive. The British pound a higher 0.2%. The yuan offshore trades at 6.9789. As for yields, 10-year treasuries yields on the 10-year again 4 basis points to 1.64%. And oil markets this morning are gaining. We jumped 2.5% for both WTI and Brent crude. WTI crude trading at $50.87 the barrel. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Gerrans with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. Hong Kong's taking new steps to stop the spread of the coronavirus. The city will quarantine people arriving from mainland China. That includes Hong Kong residents and visitors entering via the international port. Meanwhile, the numbers keep rising. The death toll is closing in on 500, and China says there are more than 24,000 confirmed cases. The European Union is rejecting President Trump's proposal for securing peace in the Middle East. The EU is also expressing concern about Israel's plans to annex more Palestinian land. The bloc says it remains committed to a two-state solution. And finally, police are investigating claims that former Prime Minister David Cameron's bodyguard left his gun in a plane toilet. A passenger apparently found the weapon and handed it to flight attendants. The Sun newspaper says passports belonging to the close protection officer and Cameron were also discovered along with the gun. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Matt.
That happens all the time. I always leave my gun lying around. But
it's quite a serious thing, actually. The guy found his gun in the plane. I think he's been suspended over it, so there'll definitely be an inquiry. But imagine just going to the loo and finding a holster with a gun and the ex-Prime Minister's passport.
It would be weird in Britain for sure. But in America, that's normal.
Oh, is it normal? So you just go into the toilet and you'll find a gun and a passport.
Yeah, sometimes people... Let's get over to Nathan Hager and ask him...
This was a flight, I should say, between New York and London, so there we are.
So
all normal, Matt says.
There you go.
What's the fuss about?
Nathan Hager out of Washington, D.C., where people just leave firearms.
Where they catch quite a few guns in the airport security check line. That is true, Matt Miller. Good morning.
Good morning. What do you got prepped? You're coming up next with Daybreak out of the U.S. What do you have?
Well, we're going to have a full recap of last night's State of the Union address. We may not have heard the word impeachment from President Trump's lips last night, but Speaker Pelosi, you could say, ripped up the script on that. We are also waiting for
seven. She had
seven
a whole
times.
Bunch of,
yeah,
I think she ripped everything on her desk.
This script and that script. Yeah, she had a conveyor belt of scripts to rip up last night. We're also waiting for full results from Monday night's Iowa caucuses. It's hard to believe it's still been more than 24 hours. We're still waiting for 100% of the precincts to report. But from what we've seen so far, it's not looking good for the candidate who had been the presumptive frontrunner from the moment he announced, Joe Biden. As for the markets, risk on this morning on reports of a possible breakthrough in fighting the coronavirus. We'll dig into that and look at how that sentiment could play out in an oil market that has been weighed down by demand concerns. Stephen Shork of the Short Group is going to join me and Karen Moscow, so I hope you'll stick around for all that and much more coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak this morning. Matt?
All right, Nathan, looking forward to it. Nathan Hager there, coming up next with Karen Moscow if you're listening on Sirius XM. If you're tuned in the city of London on DAB digital radio, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance.
Let's talk now about some of our top stories with David Bloom, who's joining me here in our London studio. Let's focus, David Bloom, of course, Global Head of FX Strategy at HSBC. On the FX front, let's have a look at this risk-on rally that we've got going on this morning then, David. Certainly in equity markets, and not much movement in FX, and that's kind of...
What do you mean not much movement? The dollar remains the powerhouse.
Well, it's up 0.1%.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the dollar rallied when we went risk-off, and the dollar's rallying when we're going risk-on.
Right, and maybe that helps me understand maybe my next question then, because I was going to ask you about why we're not much stronger in the yen, given all these headlines around coronavirus since the start of the year. We're not all that far from where we started. But maybe it's because the dollar and the yen both benefit.
Yeah, look, the yen benefits more than the dollar, so does the Swiss franc. But the beauty of the dollar is now that equities are rallying and people are getting risk on, the dollar's rallying against the yen, the dollar's rallying against everything else. Why not own the dollar? When good things happen, the dollar goes up. When bad things happen, the dollar goes up. Why don't you want to buy the dollar? I don't get it. Everyone out there hates the dollar except me. I stand alone.
I'm a big fan of dollars.
Yeah, but that's the ones that you get paid every month. I'm talking
President
about
Trump
currencies.
thanks you for your service, David.
David, what's the best measure to look at? Because I feel like right now the Bloomberg Dollar Index is at almost 1,200. It's always at almost 1,200. Same if you just look at plain old DXY. I mean, it's just around 98, 99. What's the best measure to get strength, to judge the strength?
Well, that's because there's always push me, pull you, as we described. Like the dollar was doing well against others, but the yen and the Swissy were doing better against the dollar. And now the yen and Swissy aren't. So the dollar is the benchmark currency. But generally looking at euro dollar, which is around 110 and hasn't moved, it just shows the dollar continues to be a strong currency. It doesn't necessarily keep getting stronger, but it remains very strong. And for example, Aussie's been smashed in January. I mean, Aussie this year is down nearly 5%. So I'm arguing to people, when you buy the dollar, you get a free insurance policy against all bad things that happen in the world. And it just happened that it paid off. And it's not just about the virus. There was obviously the situation that happened in Iraq. There are all sorts of good and bad things that happen. And I think the dollar is the place which puts you in a position where you kind of win on both.
Right now, we're focused, of course, on the coronavirus in terms of the human tragedy, obviously, but also what this is going to do to the Chinese economy, what it does to individual corporates. I note that Safran, the French defense company, saying it's halted Chinese production through February the 10th. Just another example flashing across the Bloomberg right now of a company adjusting here. How do central banks have to respond to this? They might not be in the driving seat of any of the response here, but certainly the markets will be focusing on what they do. Is there increasing pressure on them to act?
Absolutely. I mean, we saw a rate cut this morning. That wasn't really expected in Asia.
Thailand?
Yes, Thailand cut rates. I mean, some people were looking for it. China's embarked on a kind of loosening. The problem is that what you're really talking about is the next iteration of lower global GDP numbers. And that's not very good. But that, again, plays into the hands of the dollar because the U.S. economy still seems reasonably robust and the Fed's still got some firepower to act against it. The problem, for example, in the Eurozone is you're going to have to wait till October till they finish some kind of analysis on what they're doing. They're out of ammunition. So, and we've seen this in the UK. We saw there was pressure building on the central bank in the UK, which did a pass on a rate cut. And we still might see a rate cut in the UK in March.
But the ECB's in a different boat, right? I mean, as you point out, they have nowhere else. I mean, I guess they could continue to go further negative, but it doesn't seem to have the kind of effect that it would have if you're coming from 1 to 0, going from
Correct.
0 to -1.
Correct. And we've seen, for example, Sweden raise rates away from negative. We've seen Japan saying, negative rates haven't really helped us. They've been quite harmful. Australia recently, things have been weaker there and they're reluctant to go lower because you get to that zero bound, you get to negative and it's just, it doesn't seem very good at all. So yes, there are countries where the reaction function, all they've got left is a weaker currency.
Let me ask you about what's happening in US politics and how that impacts on the dollar, can I, David? Because we've actually had a question from a listener asking about, does your view on the dollar, will it be affected by who wins the Democratic nomination? Is that something that...
No, not at all. I mean, there's such a mishmash of things going on at the moment. It's very hard to distinguish. I mean, the bottom line is, as a researcher, you're trying to distinguish what matters and what doesn't. And I have to be honest, there's a situation going in the world that's swamping everything else. So we've got no idea what the State of the Union or the caucus that we saw. We don't know what it really means because there's so many different things going on. So we can't isolate that. So I don't think it does make a difference. And I'm not going to trade FX today because of what may or may not happen in November. That may be some other smarter asset class than us. But we're lucky if we reach the end of the day.
There's no one smarter out there than you, David.
That's true.
David Bloom.
David Bloom.
It's always a pleasure having you on, and I'm guessing that you're going to go and join Tom Keene and Francine Lacroix on Bloomberg Surveillance next. So I will tell our listeners.
Yes, but as your listeners know, I've got a face for radio.
He's gorgeous. I'll tell listeners, if you want to get more from David Bloom, go ahead and, you can turn on the TV if you want to see Surveillance next, or you can keep listening if you're in London, because in the city on DAB Digital Radio, we will play Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up, more with David Bloom, a global head of FX strategy at HSBC. If you're listening on Sirius XM, first of all, good morning. to you. And secondly, you'll hear Daybreak coming.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The Sky Broadband sale ends soon. Get a massive 30% off superfast broadband and anytime calls. It's now just £25 a month for 18 months, so you can stream, share, play or tweet in the living room, bedroom, hey, any room you like. It's usually £37 a month, but now it's just £25 a month for 18 months plus $19.95 setup. So what are you waiting for? Offer ends 6th of Feb. Visit sky.com today. Sky Fibre network areas. Speeds vary by location. Prices may change during contract, terms apply.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Wednesday, February 5th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
The President's State of the Union address is gripped by partisan tension.
The latest vote count in Iowa shows Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders still leading the way.
Global stocks gain after unconfirmed reports on a quick vaccine for the coronavirus.
The Senate votes today on acquitting President Trump and wrapping up his impeachment trial, plus the Democrats' response to the president's address. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. Talks have collapsed. The deal for the Mets to sell majority ownership to Steve Cohen is done. Red Sox have traded Mookie Betts and David Price to the Dodgers. A win for the Islanders, a loss for the Devils.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by SEI. Asset managers don't get results that are off the charts when their solutions are off the shelf. Learn how SEI's operating platform can turn infrastructure into a competitive advantage at SEIC.com/IMS.
And U.S. futures point to strong gains this morning. 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 29 points, Dow futures up 267, and NASDAQ futures up 98. The DAX in Germany is up 1 1/3%, CAC in Paris up 1%, FTSE 100 up 0.7%. 10-year Treasury down 9/32, yield 1.63%. The yield on the 2-year 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil up 2.6%, up $1.28 to $50.89 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.1% on $1.90 to $15.5370 an ounce. The euro 1.1025 against the dollar. The yen 109.67. Nathan.
Karen, we begin with a State of the Union address that was gripped by partisan tension the moment President Trump took to the podium. Chants of 4 more years rang out from Republicans after the president turned his back on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's outstretched hand. In his speech, President Trump touted a strong economy and fresh trade deals with Canada, Mexico, and China.
For decades, China has taken advantage of the United States. Now we have changed that. But at the same time, we have perhaps the best relationship we've ever had with China, including with President Xi.
President Trump appealed to swing state voters using his speech to tout economic gains and military strikes by his administration.
Our message to the terrorists is clear. You will never escape American justice. If you attack our citizens, you forfeit your life.
President Trump finished by saying the best is yet to come. In the moments that followed, Nancy Pelosi ripped up her copy of his speech.
More in the State of the Union coming up in world and national news. But first, we have the latest vote count out of Iowa. With 71% of precincts reporting, Pete Buttigieg maintains his lead with 26% of the vote. Bernie Sanders is in second with 25%. Elizabeth Warren comes in third with 18%. Joe Biden is fourth with 15%. And Amy Klobuchar claimed 12% of the vote. Here with more on the results and what they mean going forward is Bloomberg political correspondent Ann Edgerton.
Now, it's interesting to look and see if you add up some of the support, for example, Sanders and Warren together, you kind of get a sense of the progressive energy. If you add up Buttigieg, Klobuchar, and Biden together, you've got kind of a centrist energy that just about matches the progressive energy. So it's really interesting to see not just the count for individual candidates, but also how the groupings of candidates end up broadcasting what the field is going to look like and where the energy is.
Overall, the fourth place finish is seen as a major setback for Joe Biden. We get details from Bloomberg Washington Bureau Chief Craig Gordon, who's on the ground in Iowa.
Remember, Barack Obama essentially became president of the United States on the night he won the Iowa caucuses. That's how important of a springboard it was. Joe Biden has gone around the state saying, if you like Barack Obama, I was the vice president for 2 terms, you got to like me. To come in fourth place, I'm sorry, the only word I can think of is embarrassing.
With just 71% of votes counted, there's more to come. We'll bring you the latest as it becomes available right here on Bloomberg Radio.
In the meantime, let's get the very latest on the coronavirus outbreak. The death toll in China is nearing 500, with the number of confirmed cases passing 24,000. The illness remains deadly serious, though there are signs a worst-case scenario might be averted. We get more from Bloomberg's Selena Wang in Beijing.
More than 680 people have recovered from infection. The World Health Organization has said the coronavirus has not shown much mutation yet or caused a pandemic, while the bulk of the cases still remain in China's Hubei province. But at the same time, ripple effects from the coronavirus are still continuing to reverberate across the globe. The U.S. is readying for a possible pandemic with 11 diagnosed cases so far and plans to quarantine at military bases with potentially more than 1,000 Americans evacuated from China's Hubei province. In Beijing, I'm Selena Wang, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Selena, thank you. There were also unconfirmed reports adding to optimism on the virus. The latest comes from Sky News, which says a scientist in the UK plans to start testing a vaccine on animals as soon as next week. U.S. futures and European stocks moved higher following the news. We should stress, though, this and other reports on a treatment are so far unconfirmed reports.
Well, turning to markets now, it was another solid day for stocks in Asia. The region posted its first back-to-back gain since concerns over the virus first surfaced. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. The CSI 300 had its best 2-day gain since June, while an index of small-cap stocks in China erased its post-Lunar New Year losses. An index of Macau gaming stocks also rebounded, but stocks in Hong Kong gave up some of their earlier gains following a report on potential new restrictions to contain the virus. In Singapore, I'm Juliet Sally, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Juliet, thank you. Back here in the U.S., Disney's crusade to become a streaming giant is off to a good start. For more on the company's latest earnings, we're joined live by Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
Karen, subscribers to the new Disney Plus service have soared past 28 million, well beyond estimates, but it comes at a cost. Profit declined 23% in the latest quarter. Disney expects the business to lose another $900 million in the current quarter. Still, though, earnings and sales, they did beat estimates. Right now, shares of Disney up 0.3% in early trading. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thanks. Some other earnings were following this morning. Shares of Ford are down more than 7%. The automaker projected lower than estimated profit for the year. Shares of Snap down 8% in early trading. The photo sharing app reported quarterly sales that missed estimates. Futures moving higher. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg. Brings us to 5:07 on Wall Street. Let's get a check now of the latest world and national headlines with Bloomberg's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Nathan. There were a few moments when both the Republicans and Democrats gave a standing ovation during President Trump's State of the Union address. As he praised America's military families, President Trump pointed out a mother of 2 children whose husband, Sergeant First Class Townsend Williams, was sent to fight in Afghanistan.
I am thrilled to inform you that your husband is back from deployment. He is here with us tonight, and we couldn't keep him waiting any longer.
Republicans and Democrats were also united as President Trump recognized Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido in the gallery. The president also touted the creation of the U.S. military's sixth branch, the Space Force.
I am asking Congress to fully fund the Artemis program to ensure that the next man and the first woman on the moon will be American astronauts, using this as a launching pad to ensure that America is the first nation to plant its flag on Mars.
The president also gave radio talk show host Rush Limbaugh the Medal of Freedom. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer spoke on behalf of Democrats last night in the party's response to the president's speech. Whitmer talked about infrastructure.
All across the country, Democratic leaders are rebuilding bridges, fixing roads, expanding broadband, and cleaning up drinking water. Everyone in this country benefits when we invest in infrastructure.
Whitmer also said President Trump's Twitter tirades aren't helpful. In the end, President Trump's impeachment trial doesn't seem to have changed any minds, and a vote to acquit him appears likely this afternoon. Bloomberg's Bob Moon reports that doesn't mean all Republicans support his actions.
Here's how presidential spokesman Hogan Gidley is casting today's vote.
Fact is, the president did nothing wrong. The evidence proves this.
But Maine Republican Susan Collins made it clear yesterday she doesn't agree that acquittal equals exoneration.
It was wrong for President Trump to mention former Vice President Biden on that phone call, and it was wrong for him to ask a foreign country to investigate a political rival.
Wrong, she says, but just not wrong enough to remove the president. Bob Moon, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Michael, thank you. It's 5:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Nathan, Mets fans were rejoicing a couple of months ago with the news that the historically tight-fisted Wilpons had a deal to sell majority ownership of the team to the deep-pocketed hedge fund king Steve Cohen. But apparently, some 11th-hour changes to the agreement has made Cohen pull out of the deal. Meanwhile, two big-market, high-payroll teams have swung a blockbuster trade. The Red Sox looking to lower their payroll, knowing that star outfielder Mookie Betts is a free agent after this upcoming season, have traded Betts and high-priced pitcher David Price to the Dodgers. Red Sox get prospects back from both the Dodgers and Twins, who were part of the three-team trade. Speaking of trades, there figured to be some before tomorrow's NBA trade deadline. Knicks president Steve Mills was said to be involved in Knicks trade talks until he got fired yesterday by owner James Dolan. Scott Perry now in charge, with the Knicks perhaps looking to hire Masai Ujiri away from Toronto, where he's had great success. Hockey in Brooklyn, Islanders and Stars, 3-3 in overtime.
Ryan Pollock couldn't close him off, and just a swipe by Bailey gets it out of the zone. Bailey will get off, but nobody else for the Islanders. As Pavelski turned it over, and here's Anthony Beauvillier to win it. Scores!
Must be the call of Anthony Beauvillier's game winner, second of the night for him. Islanders won 4-3. Devils had a 3-0 lead at Montreal, and then trailed until a Kyle Palmieri goal with 20 seconds left. Canadiens ended up winning 5-4 in a shootout. College basketball saw Rutgers lose at 9th-ranked Maryland 56-51. But the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashauer. Nathan?
And John, gamblers in Nevada wagered almost $155 million on this year's Super Bowl. That is an increase from last year, but still below the high set in 2018. The amount bet in Nevada was 3 times higher than in New Jersey, the second largest sports betting market. Jersey's casinos and horse tracks took in more than $54 million last Sunday night. Equity futures moving higher. S&P futures up 29 points now. Dow futures up 264. NASDAQ futures a gain of 99 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Welcome to Cathay Island. We hope you've enjoyed flying Cathay Airways. Oh, and Cathay, congratulations on the Euro Millions win.
This Friday's Euro Millions is a massive £105 million super jackpot. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
5 is in! What a run! Touchdown, Kansas City!
Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs on winning their first Super Bowl in 50 years and second in franchise history.
50, Watkins, 10, chase to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown! That may be all she wrote!
While the NFL's 100th season may be over, football never stops on TuneIn. Search NFL Podcast to stay current with all the off-season wheeling and dealing. And get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft in April.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Briggs.
Now, the coronavirus prompting investors to shake up their strategies, at least in the short term. Erin Gibbs is president and CIO of Gibbs Wealth Management. She joins us from New York. Erin, I just wonder, China markets had a good day yesterday. U.S. equity markets seemingly today pretty positive, rebounding. What will it take to get a pullback on these very resilient equity markets?
So I think we're just going to see a lot of volatility where we see these down days and up days. And I think that today what we saw in the Asian markets is largely just sort of more of a shorter term bounce after we saw such a disastrous day the day before with all that sort of pent up negative selling action coming off the holidays. So I think we're probably going to continue to see more of these down days, particularly in emerging market and Asian markets, and then more of a mix in the U.S. markets. So right now, U.S. equities are really priced for perfection. We're looking at 19 times forward earnings. These are levels that we haven't seen in 18 years. We're talking, the 2002 boom. And so it really won't take much for us to have those nasty down days that we've been seeing over the past week. And then hopefully, eventually, a good rebound as we still have solid economic footing.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European equities turned higher along with U.S. stock index futures and Asian shares as well on hopes for a breakthrough in fighting the coronavirus and as investors digest the latest corporate earnings. Oil rebounding back beyond $50 a barrel as OPEC entered a second day of discussions on the impact of the coronavirus outbreak. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 26 points, Dow futures up 236, and NASDAQ futures up 87. The DAX in Germany's up 1.1%. CAC in Paris up 0.8%, and the FTSE 100 up 0.7%. The Nikkei 225 in Japan jumped 1%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong up 0.4%. 10-year Treasury down 9/32, yield 1.63%. Yield on the 2-year 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil up 2.4%, up $1.19 to $50.80 a barrel. COMEX gold is down about 0.1%, down $1.10 to $15.5450 an ounce. The euro 1.1027 against the dollar. British pound 1.3053, and the yen is at 109.67. Today we are watching for a report on private payrolls from the ADP Research Institute at 8:15 Wall Street time. At 8:30 it's the trade balance, and we get a look at the service industries at 10. And General Motors is among companies scheduled to report earnings today. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. On the eve of his likely impeachment acquittal, President Trump declared America stronger than ever before as he delivered his State of the Union address. The partisan tension was made plain between the president and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The president snubbed Pelosi for a handshake, and later the House Speaker ripped her copy of his speech in half. Democrat Kwesi Mfume and Republican Kimberly Klacik has won special primaries for the Maryland congressional seat that was held by the late Elijah Cummings. The winners prevailed over a crowded field yesterday. More than 1,800 people on a cruise ship will be quarantined in Hong Kong until they are checked for the new coronavirus. The World Dream ship was refused entry in Taiwan after 3 passengers on an earlier voyage were later diagnosed with the virus. In baseball, the Red Sox have parted with Mookie Betts and David Price by sending them to the Dodgers in a blockbuster deal. In the NHL, the Islanders won in overtime against the Stars. The Devils lost in a shootout against the Canadiens. The Bruins and Capitals won. In the NBA, the Knicks have dismissed Steve Mills as president of the team. Hundreds of thousands are expected in downtown Kansas City today, despite a predicted winter storm, as the Chiefs bring home a Super Bowl trophy for the first time in 50 years. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It's 5:20 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. On a morning, we're seeing a lift in the oil markets following weeks of declines driven by a sharp drop in demand tied to the coronavirus outbreak in China. Let's get more now from Bloomberg News oil trading reporter Alex Longley joining us this morning. And this comes, Alex, as OPEC Plus meets to discuss supply. Pretty fascinating discussion happening there. What's the expectation of what's going to come out of it?
Well, we're entering the second day of those talks today, and yesterday they kind of kicked the discussion about more cuts down the line, and clearly OPEC themselves are taking a slightly more sanguine view on the impact of coronavirus on oil demand. We were reporting earlier this week that Chinese oil traders and oil majors are looking at something like a 3 million barrel a day hit to demand. We had BP yesterday saying that it would wipe away about a third of oil demand growth. Yet OPEC are kind of looking at much lower numbers in the kind of 200 to 400,000 range, and that's probably why they haven't started quite talking about output cuts yet. We know the Saudis want to cut about 500,000 barrels a day extra of output, but at the same time they're facing a very reticent ally in Russia. So I think today will obviously be key as to what we're going to get, and I think the Saudis tend to get what they want. So 500,000 barrels a day could be possible, but it's a tricky sell to a lot of countries who are already reluctant to cut output.
Right, particularly Russia. I mean, how much weight could they put on these discussions when they're an economy that can, sort of handle a drop in crude prices?
Yeah, and this has always been Russia's objection. Russia can quite happily sit around with $50 crude and not worry too much, whereas the Saudis would like a significantly higher price. Russia, in many ways, are the key stumbling block. I think if Russia come into line, you'll find that one or two of the other objectors also will. But don't forget, we had a similar kind of objection before the most recent OPEC meeting as well. Russia kind of saying it was reticent to cut output, and yet lo and behold, by the end of the meeting, we have a deeper cut than the market was anticipating. So you'll find some messaging from OPEC as well, but I think this time it's slightly different, particularly given how soon after that last meeting. Don't forget, OPEC last met in December, so how soon this most recent meeting could come around if they agree to an urgency meeting later today.
And meanwhile, in the background, we have continued reports on U.S. stockpiles continuing to outperform. Does that factor into the discussions at all?
It certainly will. I think part of clearly the big issue here is how much coronavirus is going to hit demand. Part of that as well will drive U.S. flows, because don't forget, we're coming off the back of the U.S.-China trade deal. One of the key elements in energy there is essentially an indirect promise from China to massively ramp up its U.S. crude purchases. Lots of talk that we could see 5, 6, 7, 800,000 barrels a day of extra U.S. crude purchases going to China. Now, if China suddenly sort of has its demand stymied as it has done, OPEC will certainly be looking to see where barrels could be lost. West Africa is always an early one to kind of go in Chinese demand, but you could find that U.S. flows either increase or decrease depending on how much China wants to kind of acquiesce to its pledges under the trade deal.
In just a few seconds left here, if there are significant cuts agreed to by OPEC Plus, is that expected to have any demonstrable impact on price?
Well, again, it's a tricky one. Every spike we've had in crude has been followed by a wave of selling recently, but I think OPEC will be looking to put a floor under prices here, and certainly the prospect of Brent going below $50 a barrel would be a massive red flag for both them and Russia, and I think that's really what they're looking to stymie here. This has been a precipitous drop over the last month, and they want to just curb that now.
Good talking with you, Alex. Thanks for joining us this morning. Alex Longley is an oil trading reporter for Bloomberg News. And just taking a look at prices right now, we are seeing a lift for NYMEX crude and Brent, both up 2 to 2.4%. West Texas Intermediate right now trading at $50.67 a barrel. Brent crude, the international benchmark, is at $55.25. Equity futures on Wall Street pointing to a higher open this morning. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are headed for a big bounce higher at the open as investors weigh the latest earnings and coronavirus news. There was a relief rally on Wall Street yesterday with traders optimistic that the global economy can withstand a hit from the spreading coronavirus. The Dow surged 408 points. Thousands of cruise passengers in Hong Kong and Japan have been quarantined for up to 2 weeks after finding coronavirus infections on board. Jobs in the spotlight today, we watch for ADP's count of private payroll growth in January. We also get a look at the wide-ranging services part of the U.S. economy for last month. The services sector makes up the bulk of economic activity. Macy's plans to close 125 of its worst-performing stores, which is almost a quarter of its total store count. The closures take place over the next 3 years and will lead to about 2,000 job cuts. Macy's will also consolidate its corporate headquarters in New York. Dow futures up 262 points. NYMEX crude higher, almost back to $51 a barrel. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: You. Because it's your...
Valentine's Day is coming up, so head to your local Asda in London. Get a mini plush bear for just £1. Get Valentine's Day sorted in a heartbeat. Gifts they'll adore at prices you'll love. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability.
Despite never having used them, Alison Peartree was not initially a fan of purple bricks.
Because I heard from my uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker they don't have proper estate agents.
But Alison's uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker was wrong. Purple Bricks have experienced local agents ready to sell your home.
Turns out Martin from Purple Bricks was very knowledgeable. And he didn't charge commission. I've even recommended him to my sister's boyfriend's auntie's hairdresser, Sharon.
Purple Bricks. Book your free valuation today.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing service cost extra.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Where are we?
The New Forest.
But I thought we only had the Mini Countryman booked for a test drive. We can't stay here.
We're not going to.
This isn't exactly what I meant.
Relax. With Mini's new 48-hour test drive, you can use the Countryman for exactly what it's built for. Exploring. Plus, it's an SUV, the largest Mini in the range, so you can pack loads more in.
Great. Where next?
Well, you know how you've always wanted to try kayaking?
The Mini Countryman 48-hour test drive. Visit mini.co.uk to book yours. Mini. Who's in? Test drive subject to status and availability. Terms and conditions apply. Participating Mini retailers only.
Welcome to Cathay Island. We hope you've enjoyed flying Cathay Airways. Oh, and Cathay, congratulations on the Euro Millions win.
This Friday's Euro Millions is a massive £105 million super jackpot. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
5 is in! What a run! Touchdown, Kansas City!
Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs on winning their first Super Bowl in 50 years and second in franchise history.
50, Watkins, 10, chase to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown! That may be all she wrote!
While the NFL's 100th season may be over, football never stops on TuneIn. Search NFL Podcast to stay current with all the off-season wheeling and dealing. And get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft in April.
Daybreak brought to you by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Learn why the world's most sophisticated advisory firms and broker-dealers rely on Pershing to help them improve profitability, create efficiency, attract talent, and manage risk at Pershing.com.
We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. Beginning with the latest on the coronavirus outbreak, the death toll in China is nearing 500, with the number of confirmed cases passing 24,000. The illness remains deadly serious, though there are signs a worst-case scenario might be averted. We get more from Bloomberg's Stephen Engel in Hong Kong.
The World Health Organization came out and said the spread of this virus can be minimal and slow if the outbreak is fought at the source. And the source is Wuhan and Hubei province. The mortality rate of this also is about 2% compared to the confirmed cases. 10% was the mortality rate for SARS.
There are also unconfirmed reports adding to optimism on the virus. The latest comes from Sky News, which says a scientist in the UK plans to start testing a vaccine on animals as soon as next week. U.S. futures and European stocks moved higher following that news. We should stress, though, this and other reports on a treatment are so far unconfirmed reports.
Turning to corporate news now, shares of Disney gaining as the company's crusade to become a streaming giant gets off to a good start. For more, we're joined live by Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
Yeah, good morning, Karen. Subscribers to the new Disney Plus service have soared past 28 million, way more than analyst estimates. But the costs associated with the new business, like spending $71 billion to purchase entertainment assets from Fox, led to a profit decline in the quarter. Still, earnings and sales, they did beat estimates. And right now, shares of Disney up 0.4% in early trading. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
And John, some other earnings were following this morning. Shares of Ford are down almost 8%. The automaker projected lower than estimated profit for this year after ending 2019 with a quarterly net loss.
Shares of Snap are down almost 8% in early trading. The photo-sharing app reported quarterly sales that missed estimates.
Plantronics shares are plunging more than 33%. That company, which designs communications headsets, issued a revenue forecast below estimates.
And on the economic front, the euro area's private sector expanded at a faster than anticipated pace in January. A composite purchasing managers index rose to 51.3. That's the highest level since August. And futures this morning are higher. S&P futures up 25 points. Dow futures up 232. And NASDAQ futures up 80. 10-year Treasury down 8/30 seconds. Yield 1.62%. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It's 5:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has the latest on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Thank you very much, Nathan. President Donald Trump stood before a Congress and nation sharply divided by impeachment and used his State of the Union address last night to extol a great American comeback on his watch. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has more.
It began with his universal message.
The state of our union is stronger than ever before.
And he said,
jobs are booming, incomes are soaring, poverty is plummeting, crime is falling, confidence is surging, and our country is thriving and highly respected again.
He says the best economy ever, lowest unemployment, a blue-collar boom. The Democratic reply given by Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who said the current economy benefits people in the stock market, but not middle-class people who have to wonder about how much money they will have at the end of the month. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
The tension between President Trump and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was apparent. Trump snubbed Pelosi for a handshake. At the end of the president's address, Pelosi ripped up her copy of Trump's speech. The Iowa Democratic Party has released additional results of its kickoff presidential caucus after a long delay. With 71% of precincts reporting, Pete Buttigieg maintains his lead with 26% of the vote. Bernie Sanders is in second with 25%. Elizabeth Warren comes in third with 18%. Joe Biden is fourth with 15%, and Amy Klobuchar claimed 12% of the vote. Meanwhile, in New Hampshire, Senator Sanders responded to President Trump's State of the Union address.
He continued, "We will always protect patients with pre-existing conditions," end quote. Really? How gullible do you think the American people are?
The Senate will vote today in President Trump's impeachment trial. The vote for acquittal will likely be along party lines. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell on the Senate floor yesterday.
It's hard to believe that House Democrats ever really thought this reckless and precedent-breaking process would yield 67 votes to cross the Rubicon.
A bipartisan group of prominent U.S. lawmakers nominated Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters for the Nobel Peace Prize, a move that can anger China. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thanks. It's coming up to 5:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update with John Stashower.
Nathan, the deal for Steve Cohen to become the majority owner of the Mets was not going to kick in for 5 years, but now doesn't look as if it's going to happen at all. Neither side talking due to non-disclosure agreements, but reportedly talks broke off due to the Wilpon family's desire to make late changes, forcing Cohen to walk away. Mets fans were excited about the prospect of Cohen, whose net worth is over $9 billion, taking over, being more willing to spend money than the Wilpons have been. Meanwhile, a blockbuster baseball trade between the two teams who met in the 2018 World Series. The Red Sox have sent Mookie Betts, the AL MVP that season, only 27 years old, but a free agent to be after this season, to the Dodgers, and pitcher David Price is going to L.A. as well. Huge shakeup in Boston, where they also still need to hire a new manager. Knicks need to hire a new team president. Steve Mills suddenly fired by owner James Dolan. Odd timing with the NBA trade deadline tomorrow. Mills served 2 stints with the Knicks. The first one began back in 1999. There was a 4-team, 12-player NBA trade. Houston sent center Clint Capella to Atlanta. The Islanders beat Dallas 4-3 on an Anthony Beauvillier goal in overtime. Barry Trotz's team trailed with 4 minutes left.
The bench is great. They believe that the game's not over until that final buzzer goes. So
that's something that hopefully we established last year, and it's coming into play now.
The Devils lost in Montreal 5-4 in a shootout. Rutgers lost at 9th-ranked Maryland 56-51 with the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
All right, John, thanks. It's 5:37 on Wall Street, and the latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is on newsstands now with the cover on Tesla CEO Elon Musk taking drastic steps to silence short sellers. Also in this week's issue, how a loophole in President Trump's tariffs on solar panels is giving a big win to Chinese business. Brian Eckhouse wrote the story for Bloomberg Business Week.
They gave a blanket exemption to all two-sided solar panels, which basically negated a lot of the strength of the efficacy of the actual tariff.
You can read more about this and other stories in this week's edition of Bloomberg Business Week on newsstands now and online at businessweek.com. And terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go. Listen to Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio. Watch it on YouTube weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Get global business, finance, and tech news on your TV, computer, or mobile device by visiting youtube.com and searching Bloomberg Global News. 5:38 on Wall Street. Time for the Tri-State Business Report with Bloomberg's Ed Corey. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Nathan. The sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits at retail stores in New York would be banned under a proposal that advanced in the state Senate this week. The bill sponsors say it would reduce the demand for so-called puppy mills, a term for commercial breeders that raise animals in unsanitary and inhumane conditions. Connecticut's health insurer Access Health is notifying about 1,100 members that their information may have been exposed in a phishing attack, according to the Hartford Courant. Back in October, Access Health Connecticut discovered that an employee's email account was compromised by an unauthorized third party. Ralph Izzo, CEO of Public Service Enterprise Group, says the war on natural gas in the U.S. is silly, in his words. The head of the New Jersey-based utility says the movement is forcing homes to switch to electric heat that can be bad for the environment. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey. Nathan?
Thanks, Ed. 5:39 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KTRH in Houston. OPEC officials are meeting a second day to debate the coronavirus impact.
I'm Tom Busby, and on WBZ in Boston, I'll be reporting on the president and CEO of Ocean Spray Cranberries getting ousted.
I'm Caroline Hepker on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on the furore over the former Prime Minister David Cameron's bodyguard, who reportedly left his gun in an aeroplane toilet.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and on WCCO in Minneapolis, I'm reporting that Best Buy says CEO Corey Berry will stay on the job after the retailer concluded an investigation into her personal conduct.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting General Motors reports earnings today.
Those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. Some other stories we're following. BNP Paribas posting a 63% jump in revenue from fixed income trading after a rebound in rates and foreign exchange activity. Still, the French bank pared back profitability targets due to the impact of negative rates. And Macy's still trying to shrink to survive. Over the next 3 years, the chain plans to close 125 of its least productive stores, almost a quarter of its total. This is Bloomberg.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
This is your... What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Mary?
So I know it's tempting to pour used cooking oil straight down the sink, but I spoke to the local council and they said the best way to get rid of oil or fat is to collect it, once it's cooled down, of course, in a used container. And then you can scoop it out and put it in the bin.
Cooking oils and fats block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
5 is in! What a run! Touchdown, Kansas City!
Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs on winning their first Super Bowl in 50 years and second in franchise history.
50, Watkins, 10, chase to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown! That may be all she wrote!
While the NFL's 100th season may be over, football never stops on TuneIn. Search NFL Podcast to stay current with all the off-season wheeling and dealing. And get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft in April.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
News 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
With every action, my administration is restoring the rule of law and reasserting the culture of American freedom.
Addressing the nation in his State of the Union speech, President Trump declared America stronger than ever before.
When talking about health care, the president drew repeated headshakes of disbelief from Speaker Pelosi. Still, the Trump administration is helping Republican-led states in their effort to have all of Obamacare ruled unconstitutional. Pelosi ripped the speech in half, later telling reporters that was the courteous way to show her displeasure. Bob Costantini, the White House.
A vote on impeachment of the president takes place today in the Senate. After a nearly 24-hour delay, the Iowa Democratic Party released partial results of its kickoff presidential caucus. Senator Bernie Sanders did lead after 2 rounds of vote totals, but with 71% of precincts reporting, candidate and Mayor Pete Buttigieg has a narrow lead in the vote count. I'm John Trout.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. This update's brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the sixth straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. Stocks rallying globally, bonds slipping amid hopes for a breakthrough in fighting the coronavirus and optimism from the latest corporate announcements. Crude oil is rallying. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 25 points. Dow futures up 235. NASDAQ futures up 87. The DAX in Germany's up 1.2%. 10-year Treasury down 9/30 seconds, yield 1.63%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.43%. NYMEX crude oil is up 2.5%, up 2.25%, up $1.12 to $50.73 a barrel. COMEX gold is little changed at $15.5540 an ounce. The euro 1.1020 against the dollar, and the yen at 109.67. And that's a Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, the great American comeback was the theme of President Trump's State of the Union address last night. The partisan discord was vivid. The president snubbed House Speaker Pelosi for a handshake. Pelosi ripped up her copy of Trump's speech as he ended his address. The impeachment of President Trump enters its last chapter. A final vote that will likely acquit the president will be held this afternoon. In baseball, the Red Sox have parted with Mookie Betts and David Price by sending them to the Dodgers in a blockbuster deal. Hedge fund billionaire Steve Cohen is ending talks to buy the New York Mets. That's according to the New York Post. In the NHL, the Islanders won in overtime. The Devils lost in the shootout. The Bruins and Capitals won. In the NBA, the Knicks have dismissed Steve Mills as team president. Hundreds of thousands are expected in downtown Kansas City today as the Chiefs bring home a Super Bowl trophy for the first time in 50 years. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It is 5:49 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined from our London bureau this morning by Eric Fanner. He heads the European Consumer News team at Bloomberg News as we follow the latest developments on the coronavirus. And Eric, first off, good morning. But some of those latest developments are a positive, as we're seeing in market sentiment this morning, at least when it comes to potentially stemming this outbreak.
Well, that's right. You do see some market action, some positive market action, stocks rebounding, oil is up. Some of this is because of some reports, preliminary reports, we should say, out of China on some positive results on some tests. There are a number of drugs being tested there for coronavirus. One of them is Gilead's remdesivir, an experimental antiviral drug. There's also an AbbVie drug that's being tested, an HIV drug that has shown some promise. And then there are now some new reports about a university trial there that has shown some positive results. But we have to caution here. These are preliminary findings. In the case of this latest university report, we're talking about cells that were outside the human body. So, this is a long way from being a cure for this outbreak.
Interesting. Now, when it comes to the remdesivir, the drug that's made by Gilead Sciences, there are reports as well that Chinese researchers have applied for a local patent on that drug. How does intellectual property rights potentially play into what could be done to stem this outbreak?
Yes, it's an interesting question. I mean, this has been, of course, a bone of contention between China and the U.S. and others over the years on drugs and other issues. The intellectual property disputes over that in the trade talks. So this move, it shows that China wants to get more control over this process as they test these drugs. They want to then be part of the implementation of them and benefit from the global rollout of them if they do prove to be successful in the fight against the coronavirus. But it could create some more tensions also in that intellectual property landscape.
And when you talk about the drugs so far showing promise in cells outside the human body, what more do we know at this point about how this virus works, how it spreads, and what that could say about treating it?
Well, not a whole lot. There's still a lot of questions about how it spreads. There are a lot of questions about the incubation period for it, how long it is and what happens during that incubation period, about whether people can spread it when they don't have symptoms, which was one of the key questions earlier on. There have been some reports now kind of suggesting that may not be possible, which would actually be reassuring, obviously, as you have this long 2-week incubation period for some of the patients with this virus. So that's one of the things that people are looking at. There's progress, obviously, in other areas, but we still don't know exactly how it spreads.
And in our last minute here, we're still trying to track the economic impact with so many people prevented from moving, particularly in China, and a lot of corporates changing their outlook to deal with the uncertainty surrounding this virus. How's that playing out now?
That's right. We've had reports from Nike overnight shutting stores. Adidas, the big German rival, has just put out a similar statement saying they're closing a significant number of stores. These are just the latest reports. Of course, we're seeing companies across the landscape kind of reporting the dampening effect of this. People are working at home on a mass scale. All of this is going to have an economic impact.
Eric Fanner, heading our European consumer news team for Bloomberg News. Thanks so much for joining us this morning to get the very latest on the coronavirus outbreak in China. Karen?
Hey, Nathan, thank you. It is 5:53 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
A network of state environmental health groups predicts more states will be looking to restrict forever chemicals in firefighting foam and food packaging. Some investor claims challenging disclosures surrounding Tesla's 2016 buyout of Solar City have been dismissed, but a Delaware judge ruled the rest of the suit may go forward. 4 people have been indicted for allegedly taking part in a scheme to defraud a military health care program out of more than $22 million by billing for medically unnecessary compound cream prescriptions.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need on one legal research platform. Guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching includes the fallout from flawed caucus results in Iowa. The breakdown appears tied to failures in a mobile application that was not ready for the load from a statewide election. For more on the failure and what it means for the future, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks with election law expert Richard Hassan of UC Irvine Law School.
The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf said the department's cyber division had offered to test the app, and the Iowans said no thanks.
Well, it wasn't the Iowans in terms of the Iowa election officials. It was the Iowa Democratic Party. So we've got this really weird system where with these caucuses, these are privately run by the political parties. They're not run by the government. And I think it's terrible that the Iowa Democratic Party turned down the ability to test the apps. I think it's terrible to, when once every 4 years, the eyes of the world on you, to not have done more sufficient testing to make sure that the system could accurately work. And of course, they were doing this at the same time that they changed the rules for how they were going to aggregate votes and decide, who had the right threshold and how they were going to report the winners and the losers. And so it was a big mess. We need to have better election security, but we also probably need to take away from the political parties the ability to run these very important elections. And they should be in the hands of government officials.
When phones can be hacked so easily, why use a phone